Oops. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I'm your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this Tuesday morning. Today is February 20th, 2024. My name is James Fauntleroy. Nice to have you in here. Please come on in, sit on down, have a seat. It is so good to see. Did you do something different with your hair? You did something different with your hair, didn't you? I like it. I like it. I like it a lot. All right, the Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so go ahead and subscribe there. Also part of Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you guys can find me there on Sundays and Thursdays. If you guys have not already, please make sure, if you can, subscribe to my Substack. That gives you email notifications so that whenever I go live, upload clips, or write articles, you guys are aware of that. So please make sure to do that promptly, if you will. Thank you very much for that. Also, if you guys have not already, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe for all the deliciousness. Yes, I had tea and it is delicious. So good to see all of you here today. I just want to say just a blanket hello to everybody that's in the chat. I know you guys are talking, and it's good to see all of you here. If you guys have not already, just go ahead into your social media, take the link to this stream, and then share it into your socials as well so that people can go ahead and watch. Maybe if not now, then they can watch later, okay? So one of the things that I'm going to be talking about is this. We're going to be talking about a couple of our subjects today. Let me do that. Okay, perfect. So we're going to be talking about a few subjects. So one of the things we're going to be talking about today is Julius Malema from South Africa said, "We will march to the American embassy." What is that about? We're going to be talking about that. That's going to be a really interesting discussion that I cannot wait to get into. We'll be talking about that later in the hour. Also, new developments on Henrietta Lacks. She saved millions of lives and she was robbed. We're going to actually talk about that too. A lot of people do not know the story about Henrietta Lacks, and we're going to talk about that and the latest developments about her family. We're going to get into that. But we're going to be getting into our primary story with our guest today about renewable energy. How can it bring peace? And we have Joey Peltier joining. So we're going to get into that. So my guest for today is Joey Peltier. He is a water protector, local and national organizer, works with Seven Circle Alliance as a project developer. So also work with Honor Earth, Indigenous Environment Network, and MN350 as an organizer. So thank you so very much. Introducing Joey Peltier. So good to have you on the channel and finally with me.
Anim Buju JB. Ernest Joseph Upagard Peltier III, Indigenous Ka Makadewa Makandunja Mandunjana Ba Makanakwa Gigi Niniweg. Oofda. I know that was a mouthful. What I just said there is hi, hello, I'm Joey Peltier. I'm from the Black Bear clan of the Turtle Mountain Band Anishinaabe over in North Dakota, and I live here in Bemidji, Minnesota. And yeah, I am a project developer for a new project within the Seven Circles Alliance. And a little touch on what we're doing there is we are organizing around a project for the general strike. So I'm excited. We just had a call with Mr. Chris Smalls and a Mr. Steven Donzinger last week. Don't share that too loud. But I'm here to give a good conversation about hemp and what we are doing with our hemp industry now and where it has came from. So thank you, JB, for having me on. I'm excited. If your viewers remember me, I'm always in Savvy's chat or in the call-in shows with Sabrina. So I'm glad to be here with JB.
Great. Thank you so very much as well. And so one of the things that I wanted to start off with, of course, as an Indigenous activist, you are in tune with the land. I like to think of people who are Indigenous to the land as the stewards of the land, people who know, the land and how it operates. And I was with some comrades over the weekend, and I liken it to like this. it's like when you meet somebody that lives in a home and they know all the, the background of how things work. Like, uh, you would want to keep that person in the house and you would want to learn from that person how the home works. But unfortunately, because of the country that we live in, because of the system that we live in, the attendants of the house have largely either been kicked out or,
The
and so
ongoing
because,
genocide is real.
exactly. And so it is similar to what's going on in Gaza has happened over the last 500 years here. So as far as your experience with uh, dealing with the occupier your entire life,
Come on, they're colonizers.
the colonizers, yeah, dealing with the colonizers, how has that influenced your views? I think it's kind of an easy question, but how has that influenced your views to where you are now?
I
Just
see
as a
myself differently from a lot of our other climate organizers. When you talk about indigenous resistance, you're talking about the connection to that land, and I'm
yeah.
glad that you brought that up. I remember it was December 2021 when we started the battle for Line 3 boots on the ground, and it was my elder in training, Don Goodwin's birthday, and she decided to trespass. She didn't decide. The Monadus, the spirits, called for her to protect our medicine and to go on to the construction site and to go grab and remove some of the medicine that was laying there on the ground to make sure it wasn't trampled over. And when I say medicine, those are things that we use to heal ourselves, our spirits, and our community. And to my elder in training, that medicine was a branch. It was actual cedar on the ground, which we use in our ceremony.
Mhm.
When I think about myself as an organizer, I have to constantly remember that I'm indigenous first. And when I go into action, when I go into organizing spaces, I'm actually participating in ceremony itself because that is rooted within our culture, within our spirituality. So this is not just oh hey, Joe's a millennial, so let's go save the world. This is Joe has a calling from the Monadus, the great spirits, that directs me
Mhm.
to take care of my community, take care of our four-legged relatives, and take care of the environment around us. And which gets me into the conversation on hemp. JB, I love hemp, and folks that know my sister and I, because we typically roll together, um, we have been talking about hemp for a good solid decade now and telling people how revolutionary this plant is and how much it could save our earth, a mama key. And oh man, the hemp itself, did you know, JB, that hemp can take radioactive material, material, and after a few crops, it can make that radioactive material inert. It can clean up nuclear mess. Yeah, and we can easily make that hemp into products that we could use in our day-to-day lives. And I'm gonna go a little bit deeper on that here in a moment, but do you have any starting out questions before I get deep into this?
Yes, I actually have. The first question is for many people who may be listening, because I try not to judge, because some people just don't know. What is hemp?
Mm. Well, I was talking to you on the or before we jumped in the show, and I told you I'm not the smartest person in the world. I'm your average Joe, and I don't know too much about the good science around hemp, but I do know from the what we pulled up in research for this podcast is that it is not a psychotropic. It's not connected to that strain of cannabis, and it's just another form of cannabis that doesn't have the THC, the CBD, to the extent that it makes you get hot, a buzz off of. Trying to be
Gotcha.
careful on what I say on YouTube.
Thank you, because they're ridiculous. But thank you so very much for that. So as far as that is concerned, and I also have some things that I also want to bring up as well. But as far as hemp goes, there are I heard that there's over 50,000 different uses just for hemp alone.
I could imagine
And
that. I could imagine that. And actually, we're going to be talking about some of those uses for hemp, and, maybe conversations around how it's not as beneficial in that circumstance as in others.
okay,
It's all
all right,
how it's produced, and it's all how it's broken down.
okay, all right. So are you ready to show the slide?
Oh, let's go.
All right, let's get into it. Let's see. All right, so this is the slide that you have. Let's get into it.
Okay, give me one moment. Let me make sure everything's working on my side.
Mm-hmm.
Bam. Okay. Hemp is one of the oldest industries on our planet, going back more than 10,000 years to the beginning of pottery. Columbia History of the World states that the oldest relic of the human industry is just this little itty bitty piece of hemp fabric that dates back over 8,000 BC. Um,
Whoa.
right? So, um, you may not have realized, but hemp has actually played a significant role within the early histories of America. Hemp impacted our colonial economy, which cannot be or overstated. It has one of the most valuable it was one of the most valuable crops grown in the Americas. Hemp was a cash crop in high demand due to its versatility and usefulness. During the colonial period, hemp was primarily used for rope making, sails, clothing, that basic stuff. The strong fibers in that hemp plant makes it really ideal for these purposes. And as a result, the production became a major industry within our colonies. Some of the colonies even passed laws requiring our farmers to grow hemp to support their economy. Going way back, President Washington and Jefferson both grew hemp. And during that time, Americans were legally bound to grow hemp during the colonial era and the early republic. It was such an integral part of America. You could, for the or for about 50, excuse me, for about 150 years, pay your taxes with hemp. That boggled my mind when I pulled that out. I was like, wait, I do contract work. I kind of owe some taxes because of, they don't take it out with the paycheck. So like, can I, barter some hemp? I'm indigenous here. Let's do some bartering. Anywho, they don't allow that anymore. Um, during
Oh man.
right during the 18th century, hemp popularity surged. It became the backbone for our economy. It deeply rooted in the fabric of our lives. Hemp was, as I said, used for clothing, and many of our farmers growing the crop to supply the demands for textiles. The versatility of the plant was woven into fabrics for clothing, providing sustainable and cost-effective alternatives to importing from, you know, England. It took a long time to get stuff over. This allowed for development of a domestic textile industry and reduced the dependency on foreign imports, strengthening our economy here. The technological advancements of the day also played a significant role in the hemp boom. Innovations in farming techniques, the machinery allowed for the increased cultivation and processing of hemp. There were machines such as the hemp brake and a scrooching machine that made the production of hemp fibers even more efficient and cost effective. There's this dude back in the early 1900s, late 1800s named Rudolf Diesel. And yeah, that's the dude that made the diesel engine. He designed it to run on vegetable and seed oils like hemp. It actually ran on peanut oil for the 1900 world, or excuse me,
What?
1900 World Fair. Yeah, it ran on peanut oil. Oh man, it was brilliant. And
Wow. Okay.
the American car manufacturer Henry Ford, we'll get a little bit more into that later, but he not only constructed his cars out of hemp, he also filled them. But
I saw that.
unfortunately, by the time he got his first one made, the regulations were hammered out, and it made it pretty much stagnated the whole industry. Talking about that, when they made hemp illegal, that was 1937. Congress passed the Marijuana Tax Act. Let me see if I can scroll a little bit on here. I'm sorry. I'm new to Prezi, so we're just going to
Mhm.
bypass a couple of these slides. Bam. Okay. So in 1937, Congress passed that Marijuana Tax Act, which effectively began the era of hemp prohibition. The tax and licensing regulations of the act made hemp cultivation difficult for American farmers. The chief promoter of the tax act is this colonizer Henry Asslinger. Um, if I butchered the name, I'm not really sorry for that. He began promoting anti-marijuana legislation, not just here in the United States, but he went across the world to lock it down. Um, the Tax Act of the 1937 was fueled by politics and racial motivations. It effectively prohibited the cultivation and the sale of hemp throughout the United States. It lumped hemp together with marijuana. Um, sorry, Jay. Um, and psychoactive variants of the cannabis plant, leading to a misconception that the hemp was also a dangerous drug. This misconception, combined with the rise of the synthetic fibers like nylon, furthering contribute to the decline of hemp as a viable industry. The prohibition had a significant impact on our farmers who relied on hemp as a cash crop for them. They were forced to find alternative sources of income. Many of them went bankrupt. This was during the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl era, so they were hurting when we made these changes, leading into financial struggles for a lot of these farmers. Additionally, the ban on hemp hindered innovation and technology advancements in the industry to make hemp into raw material into products. Give me one moment to catch myself up on these. Like I said, I'm a little bit new to Prezi. I love it. It's very beautiful. Um, Bam. Okay, we hit the Tax Act. Okay, along comes World War II. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor shut off foreign supplies of fiber, which is colloquially known as Manila hemp, from the Philippines. The USDA produced a film called Hemp for Victory to encourage US hemp farmers to grow hemp for the war effort. And if you ever check out that video, oh man, it is kind of funny. It's black and white, so it's old timey. But I encourage everyone, just check it out. Our American government pushed out this video to help us produce hemp for World War II. After the war ended, the government quietly shut down all of the processing plants and the industry faded away again. The loss of the hemp industry also had its cultural repercussions as the knowledge and skills associated with the cultivation and process were lost over time. Um, During the period from the 1937 to the late 60s, the US government understood and actually freaking acknowledged that the hemp industry, the industrial hemp and marijuana were distinct varieties of the cannabis plant. And hemp was no longer officially recognized as this distinct difference from the other strain after the passage of the Controlled Substance Act of 1970. Let's see, bam. The Hemp Industry Association that's a big word. The Hemp Industry Association skipping it, of
Seminole.
2001 and thank you, seminal, of
Mhm.
'01 and '03 federal court cases reestablished the distinction between the varieties of cannabis at a federal level, laying the groundwork for the reintroduction of the hemp industry for 2014 and the 2018 farm bills. And as we know, 2014, when we started inching towards the legalization of hemp again, President Obama signed the Farm Bill, allowing research groups and institutions to start a pilot program for hemp farming. A lot of those pilot programs, I'm actually from North Dakota originally. We had one of those pilot programs right outside of Fargo, Moorhead, and it was a few acres. It was gated, and it was ran by the NDSU, which is the North Dakota University System. And I was shocked, astonished, and it's pretty cool to think about. Just we had fields of hemp over there. I love it.
Wow.
Um, coming 2018, the Farm Bill was amended to legalize the cultivation of hemp in the United States and removed hemp and its byproducts from the Controlled Substance Acts, which made hemp more accessible here in the United States. The amendment, it's legal for U.S. Excuse me. With this amendment, it makes it legal for U.S. farmers to grow hemp in commercial use, with the disappointing and racist caveat that anyone previously criminalized for felony related to cannabis use could not apply to grow hemp for at least 10 years after their release, despite the fact that cannabis truly is legal across many states here in the United States.
Yeah.
Even now, hemp continues to face the same barriers we saw in the 1930s, stemmed by decades of misinformation, bans, and anti hemp lobbying. Hemp remains largely misunderstood, expensive, and inaccessible. Meanwhile, the government heavily subsidizes fossil fuels, leaving the US truly ill equipped to produce hemp plastics in a cost effective and large scale way in which we need for the future.
Mhm.
Talking about the future, in the recent resurgence of hemp in the United States has brought about many economic and environmental benefits. Once a widely used crop within the country, hemp is now returning due to its versatile nature and numerous applications. JB, you said over, what was it, 50,000? I truly believe that we can make hemp into multiple things. I Side note, I ran for city counselor here in Bemidji back in 2020, and
Mhm.
one of my platform planks was hemp toilet paper, building a hemp manufacturing facility to create toilet paper. I wanted to wipe everyone's butt with hemp. I loved it. Not the best campaign strategies. Not the best campaign strategies. Oh
On
man.
your ass.
For your exactly.
Let me shut up. Let me
Oh,
please keep going.
no worries, no worries. Let me move forward. The cultivation of hemp has created new job opportunities and boosted the economy here in the United States where it is legal. Or excuse me, in the states where it is legal. We've seen that. I mean, look at Colorado that booms with the taxes coming in from the cannabis sales.
Mhm.
Um, Additionally, the products of hemp has opened up new markets and revenue streams for our farmers and entrepreneurs again, which is really important. You know, we want to bring back that manufacturing to the United States. This is how we do it. This is
Mhm.
exactly how we do it. And currently, it's China who is producing our hemp products in bulk, in majority. So we need to build those factories, and we need to build those mills. Now, my sister and I attended a hemp conference back in 2022, if I remember right, and they were discussing a farmer cooperative to grow hemp, and they
Ooh.
were gonna, it's still in the works, and they have an ideal of making a mill within every 100-mile radius of a hemp farm. So that means that we're saving, you know, the CO2 offage of transporting that hemp, and we're making it more cost effective because we don't
Yeah.
have that great of a distance to make it or to bring it to production.
Mhm.
Paper. So like I was talking about the butt wipe, you know, one of our biggest boons within the climate and within indigenous country is the deforestation of our forests. I live here in northern Minnesota. I'm right in the middle of the Chippewa National Forest, and right next to us is the Superior National Forest. Our tribal communities, we thrive on lumber, but a lot of our lumberers are a lot of the folks that go cut down the trees, they don't clear cut. They go in there with specific tags on trees that they need to go and cut down, and they pull them out. That's what we need to do to stop this mass clear deforestation of indigenous lands and of Turtle Island. Also, as we'll learn a little bit later, along with the Congo. Currently, making paper requires cutting down carbon capturing trees that have been growing for decades, sometimes even centuries. Meanwhile, the hemp plant takes up about the same space, or excuse me, a dozen hemp plants take up about the same space as one single tree and can regrow within months rather than decades. Over the course of 20 years, hemp can produce up to 10 times more paper than trees per acre while having a much lower environmental impact. Like trees, hemp is carbon capturing and also nuclear capturing. Just saying, I'm just saying, which
Yeah.
means that during the process of photosynthesis, hemp also absorbs carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Most of our experts, I'm outside of that. There is a huge conversation to talk about with carbon capturing and the CO2 numbers and the markets and those fucking stupid, pardon the language, those pipelines, those CO2 pipelines. That's for another show, JB. If you want to have me on, we can go ham on those CO2 pipelines
Yeah.
and how BS that we're getting fed with the CO2 markets.
Boy.
Anywho, I get too deep on that. I am completely invested on saving Mama Aki.
Mhm.
Um, Moving towards fuel. You know, we talked about the peanut and the seed oil. Um, Corn, tree pulp, and hemp are sources for clean burning alcohol, ethanol, methane gas. These biofuels contain no sulfur, which is the pollutant that causes acid rain.
Mhm.
Growing the fuel also produces oxygen to balance out the oxygen consumed during combustion. Engines stay cleaner and the air remains much cleaner. Hemp may also be profitable and produce fuel crops that can be grown in many areas of America. Hemp can produce about 1,000 gallons of methane per acre, 4 times as much as can be produced from trees. Fuel can be produced locally, reducing the transportation costs. The production process, called biomass conversion, is considerably safer and cleaner than fossil fuels. It would create a domestic fuel industry, freeing us from the Middle East oil dependency, providing jobs, and keeping our currency here at home. Hemp fuel needs no taxpayer subsidies as oil receives. The Department of Energy estimates that that the fuel could be produced from hemp for about 60 cents per gallon. 60 cents per gallon. I mean, we complain about the cost of gas right now. Could you imagine paying 60 cents per gallon for hemp ethanol fuel? Mm, love it.
Yeah, just to put some commentary on this, because first off, do people realize how much money there is in paper products in this country? When you think about it, toilet paper, paper plates, paper cups, um, there is towels, paper towels, right? How much are we using just to dry our hands or wipe our behinds, right? These are We use so much of it. And yet here we have this extremely versatile plant that grows like a weed that is not damaging to our planet. And yet we're not utilizing it based on what?
I want to express that it's not only not damaging to the planet, Mama Key, it actually restores and repairs our Superfund sites, our nuclear waste sites, our chemical spill sites,
I'm
and
done.
it
I'm done.
puts the
I'm
nutrients
off
back.
my own channel. I'm off my own channel because you know what? It's like, why aren't we funding this? And the primary reason, do not let me go onto a rant on my own show because this is. Let me sit back down.
Oh, take it, take it. This is your show. I want to hear your feedback. I'll give commentary right back to it because, like, literally, we could revolutionize the world if we transferred over to hemp, but we choose not to because these corporate colonizers want to keep us locked in this model of extortion and extraction.
Mm, mm, mm.
All
Please
right,
continue.
JB. Hemp was the subject of the 1901 conference held in Wisconsin. One of the speakers pointed out our government spends 26 billion each year to pay our farmers not to cultivate their own land. Instead of wasting the taxpayer money, farmers could grow hemp and other fuel crops. This could completely end our foreign dependence of oil.
Hang on. Before you continue, having farmers being able to grow hemp, that would be akin to every farmer having basically an oil pump at each and one and every single one of their farms. That's
Mm.
like, it's like having oil pump like right there. And so, like, what if everybody had access to oil, right? The price of oil would go down, number one. And number two, and nobody would make that much money off of it. But even though it's plentiful. But here we have a source of energy that actually helps improve our environment and is actually healthy for us and it doesn't damage our planet. Oh, this system is so egregious. Please continue.
um, I love farmers. I'm actually third or multi-generational farming family, married into a multi-generational farming family. I vibe the farms. Over in North Dakota, you will look across North Dakota and see these wind turbines. And a lot of people think that these wind turbines are owned by the electric company, and that's actually not so true. Over in North Dakota, the majority of the wind turbine farms are owned by farmer cooperatives. So those farmers are taking, revenue sources off of that wind power, and it's being sold not just to North Dakotans, it's being sold to Montanans, over into Minnesota, where I'm at, over into South Dakota. It actually covers the tri-state area over in North Dakota, wind energy. So it's amazing. I love our farmers, and we need to support our farmers more than we're doing now. And providing an alternative cash crop like hemp will allow for our farmers to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. And I foresee a lot of our bankruptcies in our family farms slowing down. Mind you, most of those bankruptcies are due to chickenization and monopolization of that industry. So we need to address that. But hemp will help our farmers get economic stability and honestly keep passing down those farms to family to family to family. Um, I love hemp. I love the hemp fuel. Henry Ford uh, powered his first automobile off of hemp. I want to move a little bit towards something that I really have a passion for, and that's hemp plastic. And fracking for plastics making, or excuse me, and while fracking for plastic making petroleum contaminates the soil, cultivating hemp can actually remove toxins from the soil it is grown in while reintroducing up to 60% of its nutrients back to the land. Oh, we know. How is hemp not being used, JB? During the buildup of hemp prohibition era, around the same time that colonizing family, the DuPonts, became started creating polymers out of crude oil. These polymers could be cheaply made from fossil fuels and turned into plastics and textiles. They caused, this huge push to restrict the hemp products. Hemp derived cell, hemp derived plastic and clothing were a competition, and because of that, the DuPont family was who is one of the richest families of the time, had used their influence in politics to stomp out that industry. Hemp derived cellulose is strong and durable, which while remaining lightweight, um, hemp plastic can also be molded into different shapes, making it plausible for alternatives for electronics, dishware, storage bins, containers, furnitures, toys, makeup, bottles. Bottles. This is what my biggest thing is, because we have all these Pepsi and Coke bottling plants in your town, my town, all across the United States. And if we can transform their plastic into hemp plastic and have it decompose, or the ability to decompose within our environment, we have just eliminated all that plastic that's running off into the ocean and piling up and making plastic islands. For reals, JB, we currently lack the technology to make too many of these products. Still, over 50,000 that you mentioned. I truly believe that we can get far past that if we actually focused on hemp plastic. And while in 2020, South Dakota University announced a research project meant to explore effective ways of extracting that cellulose from the hemp. With more investments in new technology, we are likely to find more ways to replace harmful plastics with hemp alternatives. And hemp holds up. The cellulose isn't only found within petroleum; it's found within the hemp plants. A complex carbohydrate, also a basic structure element within plant cell walls. Hemp stems contain 60 to 70% cellulose, making them an ideal option to create environmentally friendly cellophane, rayon, and plastic. Unlike petroleum, cellulose um, Hemp cellulose doesn't require fracking or fossil fuels to obtain. In contrast, growing hemp takes relatively minimal amount of water with no chemicals, and it also absorbs carbon from the atmosphere. Hemp plastic doesn't replace products, or excuse me, hemp plastic doesn't produce any toxic byproducts either. And once hemp plastic product has run its course, it is biodegradable. Unlike most of our plastic nowadays, it can remain on our soils for hundreds of years. Hemp can decompose under the right conditions within just a few months, and it doesn't release any toxins into our air, environment, or water. But hang on, just one moment, hang on. Let me emphasize what I just said there, though. Under the right conditions, because I really want to stress this because we have a lot of folks buying these hemp biodegradable products or even these plastic, petroleum biodegradable products, not knowing that we actually need um, landfills that are designed to handle the biodegradation. And if you're throwing it into your basic landfill, that's not going to do it. That's not going to do it. So we need investment within our local municipalities, creating these landfills to handle the biodegradable plastics, bioplastics, and of course, hemp plastic. I wanted to go a little bit on hemp diamonds, and we're gonna touch that a little bit when we talk about Elon Musk.
Whoa, 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 hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Hang on. Joey, I'm gonna put this on full right quick.
Mhm.
As somebody who has suffered a chronic illness, do you know how much plastic I see on a daily basis? Just as somebody who has to go to dialysis 3 days a week, I see plastic everywhere. And imagine just what this would do for the medical industry if they can have hemp plastic when it comes to our IV bags, syringes. How many syringes do hospitals go through? Right? Like so many different tools that are used in hospitals. Hell, there's plastic in when you get your IV, right? So it's just like that could be used instead. And then on top of it, a lot of people are now talking about microplastics that are now getting within our bodies. So this could also be a huge solving for the this is huge. And I don't know why many people are not well, I know why many people aren't talking about this because they're paid not to. But I think that conversations like this need to happen more widely, especially within independent media, because when it comes time for us to truly change this system, and things like that will happen, like a decade will happen within a week's time. Watch, it'll happen.
Mm.
But if everybody has this already in mind, so by the time we change the system, we'll go, okay, let's start going with him, right? I want this to be in the forefront of everybody's mind when that does happen, when we actually do change the system. Because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And preparation, when you're prepared, then when things actually do happen and pop off, then you're ready to go, okay, now we can implement mass hemp, to go across industries. I just wanted to put that in there, but yeah.
Backing up a little bit when you were talking about like plastics for medical use or even plastics for food use. A lot of times we get warnings on our plastics that tell us we can only use it so many times. And that warning is actually there because that plastic, the chemicals building that plastic will leach into whatever it's contained or being, holding. One of our huge things is like fresh sellable water. And Um, you can't have water sitting in plastic made out of fossil fuels, and not expect that to stay toxin free. And when I talked about hemp plastic being toxic or not toxic, that's what I'm talking about. So we can store our water, we can store our food, we can store our medicines that we give to our elderly and our vulnerable people without the fear that they're going to expire due to chemical contamination from the vessel that we're holding it in.
That is massive. Thank you so much for telling me that too. All right, let's continue. This is great.
I don't have a little spot for hemp diamonds, but let's briefly go into it. I don't have anything written up, so we're just going off the cuff right now. Hemp diamonds.
Diamonds?
And we're not talking about like ring on the finger diamonds. We're talking about carbon. Carbon. And what we use with that carbon is to make solar panels. Currently, we are mining and taking precious minerals from the earth to make our solar panels, and that ultimately counterproducts the reason why we're making solar panels, and that's to protect the environment, to reduce emissions. But if you're creating the emissions already to make those solar panels, then you're not doing anything. Hemp carbon, which is hemp diamonds, has been experimented and is now being used in actual solar panels on the market now. And we can transition away from those minerals and start using hemp to make solar panels. And I find that so freaking brilliant because you don't only use carbon for solar panels, you use that carbon for your microchips and other electronic needs, including going further into the batteries.
Yeah.
I love it.
Ooh.
I love it. I'm telling you, JB, I love hemp. Okay. This
Okay,
is a hard one. This is a
please.
we're gonna go into why we need to transfer over to hemp. And smartphones, computers, electric vehicles are necessities within this modern world, but their rechargeable batteries are frequently powered by cobalt mined by workers laboring in slave-like conditions in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Yes.
Let me see. Going in. Can All right. I do apologize for butchering this name. Siddharth Kirera, a fellow at Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health and at the Kennedy School, has been researching modern day slavery, human trafficking, child labor for 2 decades. He says that although the Democratic Republic of Congo has more cobalt reserves than the rest of the planet combined, there is no such thing as a clean supply chain of cobalt from the country. In his book, Cobalt Red, Kira writes that much of the Democratic Republic of Congo's cobalt is being extracted by so called artisanal miners. These are freelance workers who do extremely dangerous labor for equivalent of just a few dollars a day. He says, you have to walk or you have to imagine walking around some of these mining areas and dialing back our clock centuries. People are working in subhuman, grinding, degrading conditions. They're using pickaxes, shovels, stretches of rebar to hack and scourge at the earth in trenches and pits and tunnels to gather cobalt and feed the up of the formal supply chain. The mining industry has ravaged the landscape of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Millions of trees have been cut down. The air around the mine is hazy with the dust and grit, and the water has been contaminated by toxic influence from the mining process. Cobalt is toxic to the touch and to breathe. There are hundreds of thousands of poor Congolese people touching and breathing it in or day in and out. Young mothers with babies strapped to their backs, all breathing in this toxic cobalt dust. Cobalt is used to manufacture almost all of the lithium ion rechargeable batteries used in the world today. While those outside of the Democratic Republic of Congo different between cobalt extracted by the country's high-tech industrial mining companies and that which was dug by artisanal miners.
Yeah.
Both are fundamentally intertwined.
Yeah. Can I interject something really quick?
Go for it.
Um, I'm reading this, and a lot of people don't realize this, because I know that a few months ago I didn't know this, so I know some people also probably didn't realize this. But this is according to Wikipedia. It says the Congolian forests, the Congolian rainforests, are a broad belt of lowland, tropical, moist broadleaf forests which extend across the basin of the Congo River and tributaries in Central Africa. It says the Congolian rainforest is the world's second largest tropical rainforest after the Amazon. So, you know how we talk about the Amazon being the lungs of the earth? Well, the earth also has another pair of lungs, and it's in the Congo. And if they are, taking these trees down, cutting these trees down, and then digging into the earth to get this cobalt, then that means that they're not just harming the Congolese people, but they are also indirectly harming us as well. Because not only are they digging up the cobalt in order and using slave labor in order to do this, because remember, I talked about this a few months back. Not only are they doing this and as a damaging to the Congolese people, but it's also damaging to us because they're literally chopping down our source of oxygen on this planet from the second largest rainforest on Earth. And so this is something that is extremely important. And the fact is that as Joey is talking about hemp, it sounds too good to be true, but in reality, there are some things that are grown on this planet that sound too good to be true because we're so conditioned to capitalism that anything that is actually good for us, that helps us to live longer and healthier lives, it does sound that way because we're constantly told that it doesn't exist. When in reality, Mother Nature said, ha 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 ha, ha, it does. So,
Mama Key provides for us. As long as we treat her with respect, she will provide for us.
yes. Please
You,
continue. This is wonderful.
you'd think it'd be illegal though. You know, technically under the law, there should not be any artisanal mining taking place in any industrial mine. And yet, lo and behold, at most at most of the industrial mines, there is some artisanal mining taking place. In some cases, it's mainly artisanal mining that is taking place. And the reason is truly what we just hit, penny wages to boost production. I mean, if you imagine you're part of the world where there are millions of people who barely get a dollar or two a day to who are grindingly poor and will accept almost any labor agreement just to survive. Well, you put them in a tight pit, cram them there with over 10,000 people, and pay them a couple dollars. And they'll produce thousands of tons of cobalt per year for almost no wages. And that's not illegal, but it's happening. It's freaking gross. Why are these allowed to happen? I mean, imagine an entire population who cannot survive without scrounging in hazardous conditions for a dollar or two a day. There's no alternative there. The mines have taken over everything. Hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced. Their villages have been bulldozed to make places for mining concessions. You so you have people with no alternatives really, no other sources of income, no livelihood, and now you add a menace in many cases of an armed force pressuring people to dig, parents having to make painful decisions. Do I send my child to school today or do we eat? And if they choose the latter, that means bringing all of their kids into toxic pits just to dig to earn an extra 50 cents, maybe a dollar. That could mean
Wow.
the difference between eating or not, JB. So we talk about like, is this slavery? Into the 21st century, this is modern day slavery. It's not the shadow slavery that was of the 18th century where you could buy, trade, people own titles over a person like property. But the level of degradation, the level of exploitation is on par with the old world slavery.
Yeah.
The dangers of those mines, JB, because it's slave uh, labor. It's dangerous. Many of the families whose children's husbands, spouses have suffered horrific injuries, oftentimes digging in these large open air pits. They will have pit walls collapse. Can you imagine a mountain of gravel and stone just avalanching down onto you and a bunch of people around you as everyone around you keeps on digging? There are probably about 1,000 or 10,000 to about 15,000 tunnels because this is where the worst of it's happening is in those tunnels, and those are dug by hand by those miners. None of them have supports. They don't have ventilation, no rock bolts, anything like that. And these tunnels collapse all the time, burying people alive. Anyone who's down there, including children.
Oh
It's
my
horrific
God.
to imagine, JB.
It
People just don't know what's happening down there, and it's mind-blowing. Like the children trafficking. There's money to be made everywhere, and you got these militias, sometimes being called commandos if you're American funded, but they will abduct children, traffic children, recruit, and from other parts of the Congo, and they will bring them over there. They'll have to dig for and earn their dollar or two, because that's how these militias are funded. So these children are mostly heavily exploited of all the people there. They are the most vulnerable and oftentimes most trafficked and exploited in the Congo. And
yeah.
you'd think the government would do something, JB. The corruption is a huge part of the issue. That corruption allows so much of these abuses to persist.
Mhm.
Excuse me.
Of course.
Um, so, there's the thing is, imagine the Congo it's like a war-torn, deeply impoverished nation that has been subjugated to generations of colonizers and ransacking going all the way back now centuries, all the way to the slave trade, and also so when big foreign stakeholders come waving around their huge sums of money, it's not a long stretch to see where the corruption lies. The first democratically elected president of the Congo in 1960, Patrice Lumumba, made a
Mhm.
pledge to the countries that the immense mineral riches and resources would be used for the benefit of the people who live there. And in short time, within 6 months, they had the West had him deposed, assassinated, chopped to pieces, dissolved in acid, and replaced with a bloody dictator, a corrupt dictator who would keep the minerals flowing in the right direction. So if you don't play ball with the power brokers at the top of the chain and with the global north, just like Labamba showed what that outcome was, that will happen to whoever takes over currently. And I think that is also part of the lesson that we need to understand historically when we're talking about things like corruption. Truly, it is the West emplacing this colonized culture onto our communities, in particularly indigenous communities like the Congolese and the folks over here in the Turtle Island. Now, I want to touch a little bit about China going forward, because ties right into that corruption. China cornered the global market on cobalt before anyone knew what was happening. This was back in 2009 under the previous president of the Congo, Joseph Kabila. Pardon me if I got that name wrong. He signed a deal with the Chinese government for accessing to the mining concessions in exchange for developing assistance, a commitment from China to build roads and some health public clinics, schools, hospitals, things like that. But that opened the door for them. And before anyone knew it, the Chinese owned and seized an ownership of 15 out of the 19 copper cobalt mining concessions within the Congo. So they have dominated the of the mining industry, and it's not just that. They've dominated the chain all the way through to the battery level. They have about 70 to 80% of the refined cobalt market and probably about half of the battery market. And
Wow.
you can see on our screen that this is the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and where you see are the minerals of war all over there. That's why we've been in the Congo. That's why we're in the Congo. And moving forward, let's see. This is a breakdown of the minerals for electric vehicles. I'm sorry, it's in French. This is the best I could grab for that one. This is straight cobalt, and as you can see, this is actually on the southern point of Congo. This is where the most of the minerals that are being extracted for the battery production. You can check into these maps at the Game of Mines. I want to say it was on The Guardian. Here's an overall map of the nickel deposits within the globe, Mama Key. And I'm pulling this up to point out that it's not just happening within the Congo. Rio Tinto, which is a mining company, along with a handful of other different companies at the top, are going in mostly indigenous lands and extracting these minerals from across the globe. I want to point out here in Minnesota, we have a Rio Tinto mine that's currently in post or pre-stages before it goes into the mining operation. And most of that minerals was approved by Joe Biden as he wiped away regulations protecting us from being exploited by these extraction companies. The regulations that I'm talking about are the NEPTA, the National Environmental Protection Act. And as Joe Biden raised the level of need on these minerals, he wiped away those regulations within NEPTA that allowed a democratic process for the communities to give input before these extraction companies come into our communities.
Wow.
This Rio Tinto mine, I mean, it's a lot like what we had discussions with any other extraction or chemical often hazardous company coming into our communities, and we set up meetings with the local municipality who hosts these decision making meetings. And a lot of times within these meetings, these decision making bodies are already have made their decisions and are already within the pockets of big business themselves. Going down from nickel, there's our lithium deposits across the globe.
Mm-hmm.
are cobalt deposits across the globe. Graphite. And graphite is, when I talked about the hemp diamonds, that's what we're talking about, graphite. We can replace all these mines with hemp. All of the mines that you've seen on the maps, you can replace with hemp, which is amazing. Now, Roger asked me to come on your show specifically to talk about Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I'm here to say F Musk, F him, F the colonizer. I can't believe anybody believes this man. He got his wealth inherited from slave labor over in Africa. Why do we put stock in this man? Yes, hemp batteries are real. They utilize hemp plant-based fibers, which are processed into carbon nanosheets, serving as supercapacitors. These batteries offer rapid charge and discharge cycles and present a sustainable alternative to traditional lithium batteries. In the early 2010s, researchers began to explore hemp potential in energy storage. And what they found was nothing short of revolutionary. In the inner ballpark of the hemp plant is also known as a blast fiber, which was discovered to have properties conductive to acting as a supercapacitor. Supercapacitors are like energy storage gold. And I just want to go into that a little bit. So like I said earlier in the show, I went to this hemp conference. It was put on by Miss Winona LaDuke. She ran for vice president back in '96 and 2000 with Ralph Nader. She owns her own hemp farm. I believe it's Winona Hemp, and she helped facilitate this hemp conference. And she brought in this laboratory that through her organizing and through her work, she helped fund, that created these hemp supercapacitors. And like we just talked about, it's fully made out of hemp except for one component, and that's the outer shell of the capacitor, and that could be made out of aluminum, which JB, I don't know if you know this, but aluminum is very, very, very recyclable. So we can recycle that easily. The inside of the capacitor itself has that uh, carbon filament that we were talking about just a moment ago. And then inside the carbon filament is a hemp biogel. And all of that together allows storage of electricity. And if you don't know what a capacitor is, it's used in all of our technology, from your cell phones, your remotes, to your cars, everything. It's more prevalent in our technology than actual batteries themselves. So when I'm talking about how revolutionary this is super revolutionary, that we could replace all of our technology that has capacitors and batteries with a hemp made alternative.
Wow.
Bam! I know. And so like these supercapacitors, if you actually want to think about what it is, so what it does is think of a pitcher, a water pitcher, filling up with a hose, and it's dripping down, right? And it keeps a constant flow once that pitcher is full. So if you get a sudden burst of water, that flow coming out is still a constant. That's what our capacitors do. They make sure that the electricity within your power lines don't fry out your electronics within your house. So you have capacitors which are called breakers, and that can get replaced with hemp. That helps all of our technology. And then when you blow up that supercapacitor into an industrial size level, we're talking about the size of a small house. And these capacitors are used to manage the electricity flow within our large manufacturing facilities, and also our heavy buildings that require a lot of electric input. The Tesla factories, the Amazon factories, all of these huge factories all require these supercapacitors that can be replaced with these hemp capacitors and hemp batteries.
Wow.
In short, it's energy gold. The secret sauce of hemp batteries lie in that blast fiber. And here's just that breakdown, because I know, JB, I told you I'm not that science person to tell you all that the chemical makeup and everything, but here's just the base of it.
Sure.
Processing the blast fibers. The raw hemp fibers undergo a process to extract and refine the innermost part, resulting in a material that's almost pure cellulose. Converting it to carbon nanosheets. The cellulose is then subjugated to a high temperature treatment, converting it into carbon nanosheets. These nanosheets act as supercapacitors. The role of a supercapacitor, unlike traditional batteries that produce and store energy through chemical reactions, supercapacitors store energy physically, which allows a rapid discharge and discharge cycles. Integrating it into batteries, these carbon nanosheets derived from hemp can be replaced traditionally and often more expensive materials in batteries like graphite or graphene. Performance wise, while the hemp batteries are still under research and development, as you can tell in what's coming next, but primarily results indicate that their potential is to outperform standard batteries in the terms of both charging and storage capacity. The beauty of hemp lies in the fusion of nature and technology. I can't wait. So, um, oh, I just had something that I was just gonna say. What was it? Ah, um,
But this is interesting, especially in regards to the as opposed to a lot of what we're now thinking about lithium ion batteries. One of the things that I was thinking about, and we brought up Elon Musk. I don't know if you remember, but in regards to Bolivia, he said, "We'll coup whoever we want, deal
mm,
with it."
yeah. I mean, he's a colonizer. I do truly remember him saying that, and man's a disgusting person.
Yeah,
I mean, but it goes along the same with like the Koch brothers who actually helped implement the coup in Venezuela, and that was
yeah,
over oil.
of course. And this, dare I say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but if we were to allow the research and production of hemp in these different ways, this would literally kill the war profiteering industry.
Oh, for sure, because a lot of our wars are based off of minerals and mineral extraction. So when you replace all those minerals with something a farmer can grow, I mean, then we can make that here at home. We don't have to go across the globe and be the colonizers of the globe. We don't have to go extort, extract, do slave labor. There'll be less fighting because the resource is so abundant and it's sustainable, it's renewable. So
Hmm.
we wouldn't have a scarcity once all of these minerals are up. We
Hmm.
look at our oil markets right now, and a lot of what we're doing over in the Ukraine and what we're doing, um, well, it's part of what we're doing in Palestine
Yeah.
has to do with oil. The oil of the or what is the power of Siberian pipelines, and the two pipelines that Biden blew up, along with the oil that's found on the coast in the Red Sea.
Hmm.
And we know that Israel wants to tap that oil in the Red Sea, which they have to get to it, which is Gaza. You have to go through Gaza to get to it. And that's
Yeah.
part of the reason why they acerbated and put their plan into fruition quicker than what it had been doing in the past.
Well, let's not also forget about the LNG, the liquefied natural gas that's under Gaza as well.
Mhm.
that is huge gas reserves. And then on top of that, they want to build the Ben Gurion Canal through Gaza so that they can have a canal that actually competes with the canal in Egypt. So they want to do that as well. And really, ultimately, this all goes back to money. They want to be able to make as much money as they possibly can through having these industries go through their canal instead of the Suez Canal. So that's also another point too.
Oh. Well, let's
Yeah.
go on talking about those rich people, and let's talk about a little bit on Elon Musk, because I hate this mother effer. So last year in the spring, Elon Musk, the owner of Tesla, purchased many of the independent labs that were creating the hemp battery technology. About a month following of his acquisitions of all of that technology, the intellectual rights, Elon came out on his social media platforms, also YouTube. I think it was a YouTube video, to be real, giving a public announcement that he doesn't believe the science around hemp and that it was being overplayed and the technology is not where it needs to be currently. There's a little truth within that, in which the storage capacity of hemp batteries is, in my opinion, not where it needed to be 2 years ago when I got introduced to the actual capacitors. Yet technology nowadays, which allows us to build and store energy from breaking, allows the hemp batteries to actually be fully functional and be integrated into our systems. You look at his Tesla cars, I hesitate to even call them electric vehicles or EV vehicles, because they're more of a luxury vehicles than actually on the market electric vehicles. And the means that he uses to create his vehicles, as we just covered through this whole presentation, it has a lot to do with slave labor, extortion, and extraction of indigenous lands.
Yeah, especially the lithium mines in places like Bolivia too, because those lithium mines and the lithium mines in other countries as well, that's being extracted, from them. And a lot of times it's cheaper, nearly free, with slave labor in order to extract that lithium so that they can operate it within those EVs as well.
And just like the lithium mines, the cobalt mines, and the other minerals that are used to create these hemp batteries, they use a process of acid baths to help process the minerals. And I should have put a picture of one of the pools. Those are so disgusting to see. They are the size of a football stadium, full of acid and chemicals to strip away other minerals from the ores that they're extracting out of the Congo. And these pools are seeping into the land around it, into the water source around it. And that water source, just like the water source over here in Minnesota around the mines, they're all contaminated, and it's contaminating our food that grows in the water over there and around the water over there also.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
much is going on. So much. Elon Musk also owns a share of the Rio Tinto mines up here in northern Minnesota. He is not my favorite person in the world. Later on last year, and going into this year, Musk has indicated his interest in purchasing not hemp stuff, because he already purchased all that. He's interested in purchasing lithium ion battery manufacturing facilities. Given their 70% reduced battery, or 70% reduced lithium within those batteries, but it still requires the same amount of cobalt, still requires the same amount of other materials that go in there. And lithium, just like cobalt, just like the other materials, they're all being extracted from the Congo and across the globe, as you saw in those maps. This Microsoft announced in January that it has collaborated with U.S. national laboratories to develop this groundbreaking technology. And to me, it's only taking the direction of hemp batteries and shelving that project and prolonging that slave labor and the extortion of the Congo, of the Minnesota Anishinaabe, the Wisconsin Anishinaabe, and the Michigan Anishinaabe. The Anishinaabe is my clan, my nation that I'm a part of, and there is a mine here in Minnesota, and there is also a mine over in Michigan that Rio Tinto is tapping in for these electric vehicles. In conclusion, we need to move over to hemp batteries. We need to move over to hemp. And anyone who is interested in finding out what are the false solutions that these rich colonizers are giving us on the climate and how to debunk them, I want to suggest everyone go get your free copy of Hoodwink in the Hothouse. It's at climatefalsesolutions.org. It is a booklet. It's roughly 37 pages, maybe 38 pages long, that describes all of the false solutions that are being currently presented to us by the climate movement and the people that organize and control our climate NGOs. And I had this brief conversation with JB before we went on air, and I told him, as an indigenous person, it is hard to work within these white NGOs because a lot of times they expect you to be blonde haired, blue eyed, and talk a certain way. But when you look at the bulk of the climate base, we are indigenous BIPOC individuals that are trying to protect our communities from these extraction companies that are destroying not just the environment of the earth, but our local community and our environment within our community. When I talk about like the mine over in Minnesota, it's destroying the water where the wild rice, which is a cultural staple for my community, grows on. It's doing that all across the globe, and we need to prevent it. So, folks, take a moment, check out Hoodwink in the Hothouse. JB, that ends my presentation on hemp. It was a good one. And Miguel, do you have any questions?
Oh, I got a million questions. You know, it really is just more of a statement. When it comes to this system, from what it appears to me, is hemp stands to depress a lot of the for-profit industries. And from what I see is a lot of times they don't want hemp to be manufactured in these many different ways because that gatekeeping means that the money keeps flowing into their pockets. And also the manufacturing and growing of hemp also puts more of the resources in the individual's hands, not in an individualistic way, but it's basically saying, hey, you have your farm or you have your land where you can grow your hemp and you can make your own fuel, you can make your own different types of resources and plastics and whatever you need, you know, as far as hemp goes. So then you don't need us. And that's what they don't want. They don't want us to not need them, because then that means they don't make any money off of us. There's actually something that I wanted to share as well. This is, I'm just gonna share it really quick. You do this for the sake of time, but I thought I had shared this. Gosh, I think it was like 2 years ago. I think I shared this, but I think it's a really fascinating thing. Let me share this. Yep, found it. So this was a video on YouTube that I shared years ago, and a lot of us were just like, I was just like, wow. So this also has to deal with hemp. So this is a video about hemp blocks. And I was just like, what in the world? You probably seen this before, but this is interesting.
Oh my God, I am so sorry. I can't believe I forgot hemp concrete. Oh, yes. Oh, so my Nijis out there, my indigenous folks out there, don't kill me for like forgetting hemp concrete. And yes, JB, oh my gosh. The lower and upper the lower Sioux tribe community here in Minnesota, they are creating or they have created hemp houses made out of hemp concrete, exactly what you were going into. And I am so sorry, I totally forgot about that. Like, I was asked by my sister Gina, don't forget the lower Sioux tribe, get the pictures in there. Actor Dallas Goldtooth was a part of that push, if I remember right. At least he was in the pictures of the hemp houses. But we're making houses out of hemp, and it's not just like the concrete blocks that you're talking about. It's also about the particle board. And mind you, I'm conflicted about particle board because like the glue is not where we need it. We need the glue made out of bio glues instead of chemical glues. um
Okay.
but particle board itself, that's basic construction within all of our housing needs and our all of that. It's basic construction needs.
Yep.
The hemp blocks themselves, the hemp concrete, as you try to pull up, those are fire retardant. Those are the best insulators out on the market. And why not our farmers grow that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Go ahead.
absolutely. And so I'm just sharing this as you're talking. They're literally taking these are hemp blocks, and like you said, they're fire retardant. They do not burn, meaning that if it's set on fire, your house would not burn down.
Hmm.
This is amazing how this just works. And if you don't mind, we can just listen to it just for a second.
Go for it.
Okay.
I also want to say they don't just put it in blocks. They
What I love
can
about building
print
with
it out. They
Mhm.
can print it out like a 3D printer.
Oh wow. Okay.
And
It's
that's how some communities are making homes and buildings out of it.
okay.
Okay,
Let's
go
let.
on.
these blocks is it's like Lego for adults. That's what everybody can relate to. Hempcrete is a great insulator. It's fire resistant. It's easy to build with, and it's good for the environment.
By the way, hang on. I want you guys to look at this. As this guy is literally burning it, he's not wearing a fire resistant glove on the other side of that. Did you guys notice that? He's literally has a torch, and it's in between that and his hand. Now, if you have regular wood, I would be scared to death to have my hand behind that. But he literally has his bare hand behind the fire, and between it is a hemp block that it looks like it's probably about maybe 2.5 inches thick. That's it. That just goes to show how confident he is in hemp being fire resistant. Wouldn't you want your house to be built with this stuff?
Oh, and that's a byproduct. That's not even like the main innards of the hemp plant.
That's the byproduct?
Yep, that's just the husks.
This is wild, man.
The inner product is used in makeups and like creating the carbon, all that cool stuff.
Wow. This is just so interesting. And part of me just wants to think like how this would change even the price of housing
Mm,
in our world. For instance, because I'm a firm believer in housing for everybody, right? I think housing is a human right. It should just be given to everybody just for by virtue of you being a human being, because everybody deserves housing. And people will go, well, that will be too expensive. Not if we do it all with him.
mm. Not if we do it all with hemp. Not if
No.
we, you know, not to get into politics, but I like Jasmine Sherman's housing policy.
Okay.
And if you check that out, Sabby did an interview of her back in September, but it was more of like a B&B app type of setup. The government went in and would purchase all the houses, compensate everyone who, paid into it. And then if you choose to move, just go on the app, set up where you want to live, and it will give you a stipend to help you move and give you the available listings that are open. Simple, easy as that. Um, I think that even with Jasmine's model, we're gonna end up making a lot of houses. And rather than using wood, which is one of the leading causes of deforestation, let's be real, we should be using hemp, which our farmers would love. They could make a lot more money quicker if they, grew hemp instead of the trees.
That's interesting. Yeah. Look, I am so glad that we had this conversation. There is a couple of chats I want to get to. First, there was a video that I was supposed to show, but due to the sake of time, I'm not going to be able to show it. Sorry, Roger. But
Sorry, Roger. I talk too much.
no, it's all good. It's actually good that you brought all these details out, because nuance is also very important. I'm a fan of nuance. So let me go to the chat really quick. I'm going to start off with the Rockfin chat because I want to make sure that I don't miss out on that. And I know Roger has a few things to say. So thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. He says, JB, I told you bringing up Joey Peltier on He'll Blow Your Mind. He has, Roger. Thank you. He says, we vibe like this on the telly all the time. Oh, looky, I rhymed. Picture a multi-stakeholder cooperative established supply chain. Hemp AG co-op harvest it, then put their stuff on trucker cooperatives to deliver to worker co-ops manufacturing plants to convert to hemp into parts that to be part of bigger things. The trucker co-op returns to deliver those parts to assembly plant worker co-ops who make the bigger thing. Trucker co-ops return to deliver to co-op stores owned by the consumers, community, or workers. How you like them apples? Bring back clothes made from hemp. JP, that is green hood. Is that green hoodie made from hemp? I think he's asking. Is it?
Okay, so I love everything that he's brought up so far, and quick answer, no. But here's the thing. So most of our hemp products currently in the United States actually are imported from China. Let's be real. And when we're talking about hemp, we're talking about bringing back industrial America, bringing back manufacturing America. That's manufacturing all of that stuff here locally rather than importing it from China. Roger's right on point with that. We need to bring it into worker cooperatives rather than leaving it in the hands of a very few amount of people. And what a perfect industry to do it is hemp, because it's not even in a actual booming industry yet, but it has the potential to skyrocket into huge amounts of profit. And to me, I'd rather have that profit go to the worker rather than some rich person, rich CEO. So, yeah, my hoodie unfortunately is not made out of hemp, but it is part of the Rise Coalition set. If you check out the risecoalition.org, I believe they are a group of indigenous elders and aunties that go stir up some good trouble for Mama Key, Mother Earth.
Nice. Okay, thank you so very much. So Roger finishes this one. He says New York State has most worker co-ops. He's I'll send that link into the chat for everybody else. He said Midwest most producer of AG co-ops, public banks, North Dakota help. Okay.
Yep.
So that actually goes into a question that I was going to ask as well, because you were talking about the cultivation of hemp that could be funded by a public bank. So as far as the farm you were talking about in North Dakota, did the Bank of North Dakota fund that farm? Do you have any information on that?
The farm that was in North Dakota was funded by the federal government as part of that program back
Okay.
in what was it, 2014.
Okay.
As for the Bank of North Dakota and how they use their money, you have to realize the control of the bank is actually in the hands of the Republicans. And the special brand of Republicans in North Dakota is more of a libertarian, anarchical, capitalist um,
Ugh.
ruling, and so they are not going to promote any social benefits with that money. In fact, they've been working the best part of the last 2-3 decades trying to destroy the Bank of North Dakota and also our legacy fund. And folks that don't know what the legacy fund is, it's all of the profits from the Bank of North Dakota set aside for the future of North Dakotans. And they've tapped it a handful of times throughout the last 2 decades. And the biggest taps were for legal fights against Standing Rock and the Standing Rock, the stop or the no dapple. And that really aggravates me. I'm sorry, JB. Like, how do we pay our government, or how do we pay police to go police for a corporation? Well, North Dakota used public money to do that.
Wow. Wow. Thank you very much for that. So let's go and take a look at what Roger said further. Let me see. He says, thank you for this tip. He says, just like how Ford made the car from hemp that can run on hemp diesel, and the oil industry said, oh, hell no, then commenced to buying out the hemp industry and shelving the technology. Elon is following that playbook. Hemp can also make chips as well, not just batteries and capacitors. State attorney generals have the power to revoke corporate charters if they feel that corporations have behaved badly. That's what New York State Attorney General James just did to Trump, where his business can no longer operate in New York State. This is called the Corporate Charter Revocation Act, aka the corporate death penalty. We can make it possible to allow state attorney generals to issue co-op charters in their stead. And then he gives this link as well.
Attorney General Keith Ellingson is doing that to our nonprofits here in Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Just had to bring that up.
Yeah. He said hempcrete loosens up in summer for ventilation, no need for AC. Then hardens in winter to act like an insulator. Also, hey Joe, you sent these to me. I think people need to see this too. Let me see. Oh yeah, that was the
hemp
the
battery video.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of want to make my own because that voice on there is a little bit robotic.
Yeah, no. I was just like sound like Chat GPT.
Yep.
And then thank you so much to Bob Bros for the tip on Rockfin. Bob Bros says, hey, Joey and JB, love this conversation. Thank you so very much. And Roger ends with, he says, North Dakota is a CBI state, not just for law, but also for amendments. They can stop them. Okay.
CBI.
Thank you so very much for that, Roger.
A ballot measure state, isn't it? Is that what he means with CBI? Yeah. We are a ballot measure state. I'd like to point out, if you check out the 2018 cannabis, legalized cannabis ballot measure, we passed that, but they pulled it before it could finally get a vote, and they tinkered with it afterwards, and that's why North Dakota doesn't have it legalized at the moment. We would have passed. So our ballot measures, ballot measures in general, and even convention calls along the same lines, can always get pulled before the election day. Maybe not always, but they typically get pulled and get voted on before the election day. So the governing powers still have control over it rather than the people.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay, man, this is actually very revealing because this just shows that there is really an opportunity for us to have a more sustainable energy source. Because here's my thing: a lot of times people say, well, we just need to go back to a simpler time. Technology wise, like, we don't necessarily have to go back to a simpler time. We just need to change the source of what we use for our technology now into something that's sustainable. Like, we could still have these, but we just have these made out of hemp, you know?
Oh, I can't wait. I really truly can't wait, because like I'm looking at this, which has a couple capacitors in it, and it's fully made out of fossil fuel plastic. And I would love to throw this against the wall made out of hemp. I bet you it won't break. This one broke. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I don't throw
Don't
my
get me started
controllers. I'm
on
not that angry.
well, don't get me started on planned obsolescence, because that's a whole nother conversation that we can get into.
Well, why do you think a huge part of the reason why they put the prohibition on cannabis, on hemp? Hemp is more durable than the components that we are currently using within our technology, our toys, our gadgets, all of that. And if we could transform that plastic into hemp plastic, yeah, we're not going to have my remote controller breaking because I slammed it on the floor because I lost a match. It's going to be more durable and less. But that goes along way back in the day when they started the prohibition. It was very transparent that the hemp plastics of the day, because shit, we're talking about hemp plastic nowadays, and it blows our mind that there is such a thing. But there was hemp plastic over 100 years ago, about,
Mhm.
and that plastic was much more sustainable and much more durable than the DuPont's plastic that they were creating out of fossil fuels, along the same lines as the filament for light bulbs was originally horsehair, and they tried to use hemp, and I think hemp actually lasted a hell of a lot longer. And correct me, folks in the chat, if I'm wrong, but isn't the Centennial light, wasn't that hemp-based filament?
That's a good question.
So planned
Uh,
obsolescence goes hand in hand with hemp prohibition.
Gotcha. Okay, so I do have a couple of super chats, not super chats, but chats here that ask a few questions. I'm gonna start off with Jacqueline. Says, didn't they use hemp to make ropes at one time? I'm sure I read that somewhere.
Current to this day. But yes, originally, part of the reason why there was a tax that you could pay with hemp, and why it was put into law that the colonialists had to grow hemp as farmers, was because they relied on hemp for rope sales, textiles, and the textile market is actually what strengthened the hemp industry within the United States. It was revolutionary of its time.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Joey says, can Joey share the link to the Prezi? I'm not sure if you're able to do that.
Yeah, give me a moment.
Okay.
I'll share it
can,
in the private chat and you can share it out.
Definitely. Let me go. There was another question that I wanted to make sure I got to. Okay. Mizu says, JB, can I ask the guest, why even bother with plastic bottles? Why don't we just use reusable glass again?
Well, I would simply say glass is hard to manufacture, for one, and it's a heavier material. And as for plastic, hemp plastic in particularly, it decomposes, and it is cheap and efficient to, well, eventually should be cheap and efficient to make as much as the fossil fuel plastic alternative.
Gotcha. And then the last one, Creative Experiment, says, lithium ion battery electrolytes is similar to gasoline, which is why they explode. Does hemp electrolytes explode?
That would be a question for some science dude, not Joe. I wish I had the answer, though.
Well, According to the video, the one that basically bootlicks Elon Musk when they're talking about hemp, they actually talk about how the likelihood of a lithium ion batteries exploding is a lot higher. The likelihood of a hemp battery exploding or catching fire is actually a lot lower than lithium ion. So essentially, a hemp battery would actually be safer than a lithium ion battery. And we have all lithium ion batteries in our homes, and our phones, and yet that's relatively safe. So imagine how much safer a hemp battery will be.
Oh, for real.
Mhm.
Thinking about that, there, excuse me, I don't believe there's any toxic material that is in the creation of the hemp battery. One of those science dudes are going to have to double check me on the biogel within the capacitor itself. But I think you're right on the dime with that, JB, that since there isn't any toxic material within the capacitor, that there shouldn't be that type of risk. Although, again, I do want to put out the caveat, I'm just your average Joe. I'm not your science nerd.
No, I got you. I got you. All right. So, look, this was a wonderful conversation, especially about hemp. There was we covered a lot of ground here. We have to have you back on in order to be able to talk more about, especially in the developments of hemp. I'm hoping, because there's literally a marijuana bill that is slated to be on the ballot here in November here in Florida. And so I'm hoping that enough people vote for this so that we put it over the hump and we legalize marijuana recreationally here in Florida. And then that can open the door towards possibly Florida just, going into the hemp industry, and then using that to, for the most part, just provide for our environment here in Florida, because a lot of us are going through we're very sensitive to the environment here in Florida, especially when you have the Everglades and you have we're surrounded by beaches, so we're surrounded, and I would like to see that implemented, especially here in Florida.
Well, we got to do things that work for the environment that it's being grown in.
Mhm.
And doesn't Florida have a huge like bamboo issue with it almost being to the point of a weed over there? And where I
Um,
go with that is bamboo is a lot similar to the hemp plant and can be processed into a lot of the same different um, goods and products that hemp can also.
I'm not exactly sure on that. I have to actually do my research on that one, but I'm pretty sure that it grows quite well here. Actually, somebody made a comment about that as well regarding bamboo. But it definitely grows quite plentiful, especially in climates like here in Florida. I honestly would say, okay, Michelita says hemp is better than bamboo. Bamboo is invasive.
Yep.
So,
And but that invasive part, that's what you got to deal with. And why not, while you're cutting it down, utilize that material into something good?
I mean, that's a great idea. Either that or just import a whole bunch of pandas. Either or. I'm down with either or. Implement it into different products or import a whole bunch of pandas. Either or, either ways, we still win. But yeah, so I would like to do something like that. That's actually a really good idea. So, all right.
Beautiful.
So, yep. And I shared the link for that presentation in the chat for everybody. Also, if you can let people know like where to find you and what's coming up next as well.
Well, I am a national organizer, but I don't like throwing myself out there to get grabbed a lot. But I would have to say the easiest way for your viewers to find me is hit me up in Sabrina's chat or JB's chat. And other than that, I rarely go on my Twitter. I'm trying to get more active on Twitter. My Facebook is where I do a lot of my local community organizing. Um, and like I said, I'm working with Seven Circles Alliance. We're organizing around the general strike. Our project should be launching here within a couple weeks to about a month. Just give us a little more time. Um, we're trying to get, to be real, we're trying to get more funding so we can hire on a bunch of folks to help us out. Got to spread that wealth, JB. Got to spread that wealth, and
Yep.
we got to do some good trouble. If you all know of me, you know that I'm one of the co-founding members of Climate Defiance. So we're gonna bring in that flavor into the next project that we're working in. So check us out. Our working title is General Strike for Resignations, but there is a possibility that could change. Where else? I think that's it, JB. I think that's it. I do want to put out the caveat. If you see me in Sabrina's Call-In show, the Call-In app has a really crappy chat. So I do not read the messages in the chat. It just lags out too much. And yeah, James, JB, whenever you want me back on, I am willing to cover any topic that you see me speak out on Facebook or TikTok, and anything that has to do with climate. I'm here to be a helper for the seventh generation, and it's my job to help everyone unite together so we can overcome the black snake.
Thank you so very much. It was a privilege and an honor to have you, to have this really great conversation. Joey Peltier, everybody, thank you so much to a brother in the fight and a water protector. Keep up the great work, by the way.
Miigwech, I wouldn't be doing my job right if I didn't say free Leonard Peltier and free Julian Assange. Oh,
absolutely.
And on that note, JB, I'm gonna let you go. I kind of have this nicotine addiction that I have to attend to really soon.
Gotcha.
Gigawagamin Minawa.
All right. Thank you so much.
Doksha.
All right, folks. So that was a great conversation. I hope you guys were able to stay for that, for the nuance. I also have a couple of news stories that I want to cover as well within this stream. But if you guys have not already, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because that pushes me out into the algorithm and that gets this information out there. How many people are actually talking about hemp at length when it comes to things like this, especially from an anti-imperialist, anti-colonial perspective? And I think this is really important. So if you guys have not, please make sure to do that. If you guys also have not as well, you guys go to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com. That email notification is important so that you guys know whenever I go live, upload clips, or write articles. So that's part of the whole program, so that you guys don't have to completely depend on the notification system from YouTube. But if you guys would like to get notified just from YouTube, then go ahead and click the bell icon, and that lets you guys know also as well. So thank you so very much. As well, in addition to and furthermore, I would like to give a thank you to all the patrons on Patreon and Coffee, as well as anybody that sends me any type of resource via PayPal. Without you guys, I would not be able to do the work that I am doing. And this is deeply helpful for me to continue to keep doing what I'm doing. So thank you so very much. Yes, I am still demonetized. I do not even know how to get it back. And I've been trying. It's a very convoluted process. YouTube is very vague. So I am demonetized. I've been demonetized since October because I showed, what Israel was doing to the Palestinians. So that's why I am still demonetized. So if you like to support the channel, you can support via Patreon or PayPal. Now, just to let you guys know what you're getting into so you can make an informed decision, let me share with you guys the tiers so that you guys can see that. So on Patreon, we have JB members. Solidarity, Comrades, Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, and Mega Jaybefaunters. So thank you so very much for that. And also, in addition to, and furthermore, I would like to give a shout out to new patron, Gene Schaefer. Thank you so very much for becoming a patron on Patreon. Much love to you. Mwah, forehead kisses. All right, thank you. You weren't expecting that, but I gave it to you anyway. Let's go to the chat and let's get some of these comments in. And also, let me say my salutations to some of you. Leroy coming in hot says, in our country, it'll likely start war. Yep. Thank you so very much. CBC Voter says, yo, happy Tuesday at JB. Good to see you, CBC Voter. Jacqueline coming in saying, hi, everyone. Hi, Jaybefaunt, CBC Voter. Leroy, good to see you also as well, Jacqueline. Samuel says, let's go, JB. Let's go, Samuel. Let's go. Nice to have you. Sakudo coming in saying, let's do this. Like Brutus, baby. All right. Ghost Nest coming in saying, hi. Good to see you, Ghost Nest. All right. Hobb says, LOL, guess Leela sure has been there a while. Yeah, but you know what? That's what nuance, takes place. You had to have that conversation, and I'm glad that we did. Gamer says, RBN crew had a great show last night, and I'm glad JB and Savvy joined in too. Yeah, that was a difficult conversation, but it was necessary conversation. But yes, thank you so very much for that, Gamer. Zoe says, LOL, me who actually did something with me hair. Good to see you, Zoe. Terry Connolly coming in saying, peace and solidarity, comrades. Good to see you. Bryce Smith coming in saying, morning, JB and everyone. I'm catching up on yesterday's RBN stream too. Yes, that was a stream of streams. We were up late. All right. Thank you so very much. Yes, we actually answered that question from Roger. Thank you so very much. V.S. Adams says, one of the strongest fibers on earth, talking about hemp. Absolutely. I would love for us to get more deeper into that. Jacqueline says, didn't they use hemp to make rope? Oh, yeah, we already asked that question. V.S. Adams says, that's nuts. Yes, that's knucking futz. Thank you so very much. Victor Devan says, facts. Good to see you, Victor Devan. Let me see. Marco says, hemp co-ops for the win. Yes, absolutely. I do agree. I think we should have more co-ops that are involved with hemp production. The Quantum Alchemist says, in all honesty, biofuels are inefficient in the sense that they don't pack as much energy density as oil or let alone methane. Thank you very much for that, Quantum Alchemist. Zoe says, my dad managed to ruin his engine of cheap alcohol. Wow. I'm sorry, my dad managed to run his engine of cheap alcohol. That's interesting. Yeah. Cobra Commander says, electricity is simple and I love it. Electrons, simple. Electricity from batteries is produced when we strip electrons from water and sulfur molecules. So how would hemp do this chemical reaction? Oh, I forgot to share that. Well, he said he's not the scientist, but I think this would be actually a great question for somebody who's deeply involved in the science of it. I would like to answer that question too. Quantum Alchemist says, the joke is even CBD is illegal in China. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Edward coming in saying, yay, hemp, boo, Harry Aslinger. and Slinger. Sorry, I said that name wrong. Let me see. Cobra Commander says, no, I need to hear about him. Okay, yeah, we talked about hemp batteries. Michelita says you can grow hemp just for textiles. It is not for smoking. No THC, of course. So I learned that. Thank you so very much. Rondo says the first drafts of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States of America were written using hemp parchment. I did not know that. Thank you so very much. Rondo also says the DuPont family is why New Jersey smells like bologna. Not South Jersey, though. I'm going to be real. Okay, I'm from South Jersey. South Jersey is gorgeous. Rolling hills. I absolutely love it. Killian Grigor says everything tastes better when it comes out of a glass bottle, including me. No, including me. Dun, 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 dun. Sorry. Why the hell y'all watch this show? Oh my God. Shout out from Savvy Sabs who's been watching. Good to see you, Sabs. Nice to have you. All One Same says, let's hope hemp is grown without chemicals. Big agriculture is still addicted to petrochems and natural gas to grow our food. Absolutely. Mastermind Hour says, Quantum Alchemist, I agree. Losing the rainforest will have almost zero effect on CO2, but the loss of the biodiversity will be a tragedy on a biblical scale. Absolutely. Creative Experiment says, Tim Cook makes phone batteries die sooner, so you buy more phones and more cobalt. That is what we call planned obsolescence. Thank you so very much for that. And then Vincent Cafe says, thanks for the stream, JB and Joby. Much needed conversation. Thank you so very much for that. Also, just checking on The Rock to make sure that, yep, I am caught up on that. So, what else were we talking about today? Woo, this is a stream of streams, baby. Let's get into it. So, we're going to be talking about next. She saved millions of lives and she was robbed. Do you know who Henrietta Lacks is? If you haven't, not to worry, I got you. Henrietta Lacks is a woman that was born in the 30s. She will be over 100 years old today. Unfortunately, because of Henrietta Lacks and how what basically the medical community did to her, it's a benefit, yet at the same time, it's still a tragedy. So let's go into what Henrietta Lacks, the story of Henrietta Lacks from Johns Hopkins University first, and then once we go from them, then we shall continue because they give a little bit of their own, how should I say, their own, it's kind of revision of what happened, right? So let's get into it. So this is from Johns Hopkins, says the Hinge honoring Henrietta. So says in 1951, a young mother of 5 named Henrietta Lacks visited the Johns Hopkins Hospital complaining of vaginal bleeding. Upon examination, renowned gynecologist Dr. Howard Jones discovered a large malignant tumor in her cervix. At the time, the Johns Hopkins Hospital was one of only a few hospitals to treat poor African Americans. As medical records show, Mrs. Lacks began undergoing radium treatments for her cervical cancer. This was the best medical treatment available at the time for this terrible disease. A sample of her cancer cells retrieved during the biopsy were sent to Dr. George Geese, I think his name is, nearby tissue lab. For years, Dr. Geese, a prominent cancer and virus researcher, had been collecting cells from all patients, regardless of their race or socioeconomic status, who came to the Johns Hopkins Hospital with cervical cancer, but each sample quickly died in Dr. Gee's lab. What Dr. Gee would soon discover was that Mrs. Lack's cells were unlike any other he has ever seen. Where other cells would die, Mrs. Lack's cells doubled every 20 to 24 hours. Today, these incredible cells, named HeLa cells, from the first 2 letters of her first and last names, are used to study the effects of toxins, drugs, hormones, and viruses on the growth of cancer cells without experimenting on humans. They have been used to test the effects of radiation and poisons, to study the human genome, to learn more about how viruses work, and played a crucial role in the development of the polio and C-19 vaccines. Although Mrs. Lacks ultimately passed away on October 4th of 1951 at the age of 31, her cells continue to impact the world. So I'm not going to read this entire thing, but that's what they said, that they just procured somehow the cells from Henrietta Lacks. Now, let's get into why this was controversial. And then we'll get into what happened further. So let me do this. All right. And share the screen once more so that you guys can get this. All right. All right.
This woman's cells were used for research on COVID, polio, cancer, and so much more, but her cells were taken without her consent. Let's talk about Henrietta Lacks. Her contributions to medicine have unlocked medical achievements in every industry. At the young age of 31, Henrietta died of cervical cancer. But before her death and without her consent, doctors removed some of her tumor cells and sent them to Johns Hopkins researchers. Henrietta's cells were found to rapidly multiply, a breakthrough that no other human cell had achieved. Doctors created a patent on the HeLa line, but hid her true identity under a fake name, Helen Lane. In the 70 years since her death, her cells have been bought, sold, packaged, and shipped by trillions of laboratories. And her cells have been used in 74,000 studies and have even won Nobel Prizes. Her cells have even been sent into space to examine them under spaceflight. But Henrietta, who was poor, black, and had little education, was never recognized. It wasn't until 2020 that reparations were started. This woman's cells were used for research.
So essentially, her cells were taken without consent. That's a lot. This is why a lot of times before they take any samples from you when you go to a medical facility now, you have to sign consent now, because ultimately what they did was essentially unethical. Even though it led to the developments of many essential technological advances medically, the way they went about it was unethical. And that's why I think it's so important that we discuss this story. So let me share this. I'm going to share this quick video, and then it gets just a little bit deeper rather than just a short TikTok video. So they're talking about Henrietta Lacks as well.
Imagine something small enough to float on a particle of dust that holds the keys to understanding cancer, virology, and genetics. Luckily for us, such a thing exists in the form of trillions upon trillions of human lab-grown cells called HeLa. Let's take a step back for a second. Scientists grow human cells in the lab to study how they function, understand how diseases develop, and test new treatments without endangering patients. To make sure that they can repeat these experiments over and over and compare the results with other scientists, they need huge populations of identical cells that can duplicate themselves faithfully for years. But until 1951, all human cell lines that researchers tried to grow had died after a few days. Then a Johns Hopkins scientist named George Guy received a sample of a strange-looking tumor. Dark purple, shiny, jelly-like. This sample was special. Some of its cells just kept dividing and dividing and dividing. When individual cells died, generations of copies took their place and thrived. The result was an endless source of identical cells that's still around today, the very first immortal human cell line. Guy labeled it HeLa after the patient with the unusual tumor, Henrietta Lacks. Born on a tobacco farm in Virginia, she lived in Baltimore with her husband and 5 children. She died of aggressive cervical cancer a few months after her tumor's cells were harvested, and she never knew about them.
That's the part that a lot of people are upset about. So while they were basically testing, doing a biopsy on the cells, they took some and then they used it to research, and then they started growing more of those cells in the lab in order to test on more of those. And So this was one of the biggest issues. It was taken without her consent. Let's continue.
So what's so special about the cells from Henrietta Lacks that lets them survive when other cell lines die? The short answer is, we don't entirely know. Normal human cells have built-in control mechanisms. They can divide about 50 times before they self-destruct in a process called apoptosis. This prevents the propagation of genetic errors that creep in after repeated rounds of division. But cancer cells ignore these signals, dividing indefinitely and crowding out normal cells. Still, most cell lines eventually die off, especially outside the human body. Not HeLa, though, and that's the part we can't yet explain. Regardless, when Dr. Guy realized he had the first immortal line of human cells, he sent samples to labs all over the world. Soon the world's first cell production facility was churning out 6 trillion HeLa cells a week, and scientists put them to work, in an ethically problematic way, building careers and fortunes off of Henrietta's cells without her or her family's consent, or even knowledge until decades later.
So think about the amount of money that came from her cells and researching her cells, and the fact that her family could not get any compensation from this. This also goes into the theme of how Black people are treated in this country. We've been tested, poked, and prodded, and the results are used to make other people rich while we still continue to suffer in the process. This is something that a lot of people don't talk about. If you haven't heard about Henrietta Lacks, this is the time to learn about her now. And this is also a narrative that has continued in the Black community for a long time. Let's continue.
The polio epidemic was at its peak in the early 50s. HeLa cells, which easily took up and replicated the virus, allowed Jonas Salk to test his vaccine. They've been used to study diseases including measles, mumps, HIV, and Ebola. We know that human cells have 46 chromosomes because a scientist working with HeLa discovered a chemical that makes chromosomes visible. HeLa cells themselves actually have around 80 highly mutated chromosomes. HeLa cells were the first to be cloned. They've traveled to outer space. Telomerase, an enzyme that helps cancer cells evade destruction by repairing their DNA, was discovered first in HeLa cells. In an interesting turn of fate, thanks to HeLa, we know that cervical cancer can be caused by a virus called HPV, and now there's a vaccine.
Just to let you guys know, as far as that vaccine is concerned, it's now being given to pretty much all young ladies, young women, females in the United States, so that it can prevent them from getting cervical cancer. I don't know if you guys remember a few years back, there was this huge campaign of getting your child vaccinated for cervical cancer, especially it started off with girls. But then what happened? They started giving the vaccine to boys. And so now boys are now also given that, because HPV, human papillomavirus, can be transmitted through boys to girls, right? Especially if the male is not circumcised. So now, because we have that vaccine, the necessity for circumcision actually is pretty much non-existent now. So that goes to show where, because of Henrietta Lacks, right? Now we have these vaccines further that actually help us to be able to evade these different viruses as well, including the virus that essentially killed Henrietta Lacks in the first place.
HeLa-fueled discoveries have filled thousands of scientific papers, and that number is probably even higher than anyone knows. HeLa cells are so resilient that they can travel on almost any surface. A lab worker's hand, a piece of dust, invading cultures of other cells and taking over like weeds. Countless cures, patents, and discoveries, all made thanks to Henrietta Lacks.
So that is how powerful this is. And I want people to realize. Now, here's the question. Did her family benefit from this? You look at my face and tell me if that actually happened. You know. Especially y'all who are black. Y'all know. Ain't nothing y'all know. So I have this to share as well. So there has been a development because Henrietta Lacks' family has went to court basically for saying that they should benefit from her essentially the donation of her cells. So let's get into that because I think this is deeply important. So this is the primary part of the story that I want to get into.
Finally, after more than 70 years, a measure of justice for the family of Henrietta Lacks, whose cells were taken without her family's consent and led to groundbreaking medical discoveries. Here's Jake Ward.
Henrietta Lacks is inside all of us in treatments and vaccines her cells made possible. And tonight, her family is finally being compensated for her contributions.
Such sacrifice that she had to give of herself that benefited all the world.
Lacks died of cervical cancer in 1951 at Johns Hopkins, where, in a racially segregated ward, doctors cut out a sample of her cancer cells without her permission. The cells, nicknamed HeLa, were the first to grow well in a lab and are now a bedrock of modern medicine. Her family sued multi-billion-dollar Thermo Fisher Scientific in 2021, saying the company, quote, made staggering profits by using the HeLa cell line, although it, quote, has known that HeLa cells were stolen from Ms. Lacks.
Stolen. Let's call a thing a thing. They stole her cells and then used the cells to make billions of dollars off of her. And yet her family, did they get any compensation for it? Did she get any compensation for it? Nope. Off a black woman. Seems to be the theme that happens throughout the history of this country. How black and brown women are constantly being used and then thrown away. This is why we need to treat them better. I have some things I'm going to say after this, but let's continue.
The family settled for an undisclosed amount Monday. Thermo Fisher says it's pleased the case is resolved, but had no further comment.
Today, on her 103rd birthday, we got justice. Her legacy is in good hands. Our family is standing together in solidarity to push forward. We're going to keep making sure Henrietta never dies, such as her HeLa cells never die.
Lacks was an impoverished tobacco farmer, a mother of 5 when she developed cervical cancer, and never knew that her unique cells would be part of everything from genome mapping to the eradication of polio.
And Hopkins made all that money off of our mother.
The immortal life of Henrietta Lacks brought worldwide attention to her contribution and to unethical experimentation on black bodies by medical science.
There just isn't a moment in medical history that doesn't somehow connect to her cells.
A bipartisan bill introduced last week would give Lacks a congressional gold medal. And now her family, several of whom suffered chronic illness without health insurance over the years, will share in the bounty that her body made possible. Jake Ward, NBC News.
The fact that her family members don't have adequate health care, and yet these medical technology companies made billions off of her cells? That's wild, isn't it? How would you feel if your cells were taken without your consent and used in research, which caused many medical breakthroughs? And in doing so, these companies made billions in profit just from you. How would you feel? The ruling or the settling of this case for an undisclosed amount, so it could be within the millions upon millions of dollars. That's reparations. I know some people are going to get mad and be like, well, reparations is something that should be paid to the people who are actually affected. Well, no, because guess what? It actually affected her family too. She died at 31. And these companies made millions and millions off of her. So, of course, reparations is owed. This is why the profit motive must be taken out of healthcare. If we had a national healthcare system that didn't make profit, then this story would have been less egregious. Would it have still have been bad? Yes, because they did take her cells without her consent. But what made it worse is that they made billions of dollars from her cells and innovation from research, while many of her surviving family members struggle financially. We Black people have been used. We've been experimented on. And they have profited off of our bodies without us receiving one iota of compensation for it. Modern gynecology wouldn't exist without the enslaved females that were operated on without anesthesia. The Tuskegee experiments were a horrible chapter in our history and how Black men were treated in regards to medical science. So when we talk about wanting to change the system, this is one of the reasons why. And so I am happy that they are getting the reparations that's due to them. And so that's the latest developments on Henrietta Lacks. And also her cells continue to develop medical technology even down to this day, which I am grateful for, because it most likely also contributed to why I'm still alive today. So, despite the way they got your cells, thank you to Miss Henrietta Lacks for your sacrifice. And I hope that your family is made whole again. Did you like the stream? Go ahead and give a like as well. Thank you so very much. We're going to go to the comments in the chat really quick regarding this story as well. So let me start off on The Rock. Solid as a rock. All right. So thank you so very much for the tip on Rockfin. Roger, he says, raised in Baltimore. Stabby! You might be a relative. You might be due for some dough. Get you your money. Remember, I knew you when you were dead broke. Don't forget your boy. I was thinking about that too. I'm like, Baltimore, let me talk to Stabby about this. So yeah, that is awesome. Let's go to the chat here. All right. Woo! Zoe says, when we tell y'all you wouldn't have anything without Black people, believe us. Peter Grigor says, amazing. No other person has these cells. Can folks be tested for it? That's my question. Like, could you? And then if you do, then you should be compensated for it. Like, as long as we're going to have profit within this system, then anybody's cells who's used for this should receive compensation for it. Just saying. Commenter says, imagine a biological artificial intelligence made with her cells. Interesting. Very interesting. Whoever says it's even worse than nothing because they strong-armed them and treated them like ish when they realized how valuable her cells are to science. Yeah. And it took years. They've been fighting for years in regards to this. Rondo says the Lax family should be billionaires, if not trillionaire. Right? But that's how capitalism works, right? It exploits, it extracts, it takes from other people and then uses other people's resources and sells in order to make more money, in order to profit off of that person. It's wild. And yet it wasn't their cells, it was her cells. And yet she can't get some of the cut. I'm just saying. Let's continue. Good to see you, Wardy. Mizu says, even I would refuse because most scientists are discussing and mad like Frankenstein in their curiosity. Jacqueline says, my mom got sterilized without her permission after her fourth child caused some serious issues later. What? They did your mama like Israel did the Ethiopian Jewish women? Yes, by the way, Ethiopian Jewish women were sterilized without consent in Israel. It's actually covered in Haaretz their website. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about that, Jacqueline. Let me see. Yeah, Creative Experiment says, looks like black women keeping us alive. Yep. Absolutely. Zoe says, oh wow, a congressional gold medal. Yeah, it's like, what's that congressional gold medal really going to do for the family, right? Like, number one, an apology. Number two, pay him what's owed. Let me see. Rando says her family is not compensated, but those companies still made money from herself. They should give up all that money. Ooh. See, you're about to make some capitalists mad. But, they made billions. Yes. She died at 31. Yep. Mizu said the Lax family should ask for royalties. I mean, I don't disagree at all, right? Whoever says I effing tell everyone about Henrietta Lacks. Yup. And make that wide, share it. Let me see. Marco says her unique cells came from the tumor. Yup. Katie Lewis says, can't forget C-sections are a thing due to conducting the practice on enslaved Black women. Yes. The person who's, I forget his name, but who's considered the father of gynecology, he did all his research on enslaved Black women without anesthesia. Yeah. And people are like, well, you got to bring race into it, because race is in everything. Thank you very much for that, Katie. Good to see you in the chat as well. Roger says, play that hemp battery video when ending the show on your way out. I'll try. I already have a closing video, but I don't know. We'll see. Roger Meadow says, but that naming of that movie they shown with Oprah, that is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. She actually played one of Henrietta Lacks's kids in the movie. Yeah, so The Immortal Life, yes, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. I think my mother told me about that movie years ago when it first came out. And yes, that is a perfect title. Mm-hmm. All right. So now to our final story. Let's get into it. I like this guy. Let me tell you, boy, says we will march to the American embassy. Julius Malema. Look, Uncle Julius. That's what I'm going to call him. Uncle Julius. Because Uncle Julius ain't playing around with none of y'all. I'm telling you. Look, if you guys do not know who this man is, look, let me put this picture back up. If y'all don't know who this man is, y'all need to get with the times. Because this man in South Africa, ooh, he is, he got some things to say. Let's get into it, y'all. I'm gonna share this with you guys because I saw this. I was like, the hell? Uncle Julius. Let me see. He said some things about Israel and the U.S. Let me share the screen. And we're going to react to this. Julius Malema, part of the EEF, the Economic Freedom Fighters. And yes, he is left. Oh, he's left. He's Nelson Mandela left. Yeah. All right, let's get into it, y'all. Let me share. Let me enlarge. Let's roll this beautiful beam footage.
If the bombardment and genocide of Palestinians continues, we'll be left with no choice but to march to the American embassy, as we no longer have the Israeli embassy in South Africa. We will march to the American embassy as a sponsor of the war and genocide in Palestine. ICJ Palestine, we're with Palestine, my guy. How we make no apology about that. We will never be on the side of apartheid when we are the victims of apartheid.
He said we make no apologies. None. And so a lot of times people will sit here and talk about how there's no apartheid in Israel. Even what's his name? Zionist and mayor of Rotten Cream Cheeseville, Michael Rappaport, is saying, "Oh, there's no apartheid. Where's the apartheid here in Israel? I don't see apartheid anywhere." Meanwhile, the people who have been through apartheid, like Julius Malema, are looking at Israel and going, "Oh, we recognize that." That's like asking somebody who was born and raised in the Jim Crow South to identify racism. And then when they point it out, you're like, "Oh, I don't believe you." What? Are you kidding me right now? That's like asking a person who has been physically and emotionally abused by their partner, and then they see somebody else being physically and emotionally abused, and then they look at that person and go, "Oh, they're being physically and emotionally abused. I can see the signs because I've been through it." And when they point it out, you don't believe them? Hold up. Wait. This is just the same thing as, and pardon me for this, no offense to the white people in the chat, but this is like with some white people, when a black person goes, "Nah, man, they're being racist." And then you go, "I don't see it." You better listen to that person that was a victim. Because a lot of times we can identify what the problems are, what the red flags are, before anybody who hasn't been victimized by it has. And so Julius Malema is saying, yeah, there's apartheid definitely in Israel. And then when you have also anti-Zionist Jewish people saying it, and anti-Zionist Israelis, as well as Palestinians saying it, then yes, because they went through it. And they're not just saying it to blow smoke up your behind. It actually exists. And he's talking about closing the U.S. embassy because they're being a sponsor of the terrorism? Oh, some strong words, Uncle Julius. Let's continue.
We refuse Israel, apartheid Israel, to wipe off the earth the Palestinians, not under our watch. We are nobodies. We are children of the victims of apartheid. With our little influence in our little corner, we shall raise the Palestinian flag unapologetically so. We don't pretend about this. The ANC pretends because we passed a resolution in parliament that the Israeli embassy must be removed. Why is that embassy still opened? They are pretending to be doing something with this public relation ICJ. There is a fresh attack. Now we must go back to ICJ and say, no, you must implement your judgment. Your judgment must be implemented. That is public relations. The real action, if you mean it, close the Israeli embassy.
So what Julius is saying is it's not enough just to go to the ICJ. Close the embassy. Close the embassy, cut them off. Israel should not have an embassy that's open in South Africa, and neither should the U.S. That's basically what Julius is saying. Because the thing is that what happened with the ICJ is more symbolic than anything in my eyes. Of course, South Africa had to essentially play the game a little bit to show the ineffectual nature of the ICJ, right? But at the same time, on top of that, what is really going to happen if the ICJ needs to enforce the law, enforce the ruling on Israel? What's really going to happen? This is why programs like BDS, Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions, are so powerful, because it actually affects their material conditions. It says, if you're going to keep doing this, then we're going to cut you off. This is why they despise what Yemen and the Houthis are doing in the Red Sea, because it's literally affecting their daily lives by blocking these shipments from coming through the Red Sea and going into Israel. This is making everything more expensive for them. Their goods that have to come from Asia is going to go up in price. Why? Because if they're blocked from the Red Sea, they have to go all the way under the Cape, under South Africa, and go all the way up, all the way over, through the Mediterranean Sea and into Israel. That means that adds another 2 weeks to their trip. Do you guys realize how massive Africa is? Africa is massive. So, with that being said, going after their material conditions is how you affect them. You make these Zionists feel sorry that they ever laid their little fingers on a Palestinian. And that's what Julius Malema is talking about. Actual on-the-ground effects. Close the embassy for Israel, close the embassy for the United States, and say, you will not have access to us, no friendly relations with us until you make things right with the Palestinians. And this is not foreign to people like Julius Malema, because remember, Nelson Mandela was also an activist. He was a friend of Yasser Arafat. He was a friend to the Palestinians. They literally have a statue built of Nelson Mandela in Palestine. And so Julius Malema is just following the footsteps of Nelson Mandela. Now you see why I'm hype over him, right? All right, let's continue.
We're being mobilized here by the media and everyone else to concentrate on nonsense of ICJ. Let's close the Israeli embassy as agreed to by parliament. If we're brave and stop acting like we're rushing to a multinational bodies that are toothless. We support that action fully, but we think there is a more impactful action that we can take in support of the people of Palestine, and that is closing of the Israeli embassy. Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC must stop being pretentious, busy over nothing on the Palestinian question. Let's close the embassy. Parliament.
Basically, he said, don't be a bunch of wusses. Close it. What are they going to do? What are they going to do? South Africa is a part of BRICS, baby. What? BRICS literally has more GDP pulled together than the G7. Like, what are they going to do? Are they actually going to mess with South Africa? Who's South Africa partners with? Brazil, China, Russia, India? They're partners with them. And then BRICS just added on more people? More countries? Come on now. Julius is basically giving a speech to hype him up to actually do the damn thing that they need to do in order to show Israel, like, nah, don't be messing with these people. Keep going.
They said we must close the embassy. That is not a declaration of hatred against the Jews. We never said we are fighting the Jews. We are fighting apartheid Israel. There's a difference. And we make no apology about that.
And that's the thing. He says, look, this has nothing to do with Jewish people. This has to do with the apartheid conditions in Israel. And a lot of people keep talking about, and here's one of my biggest issues. A lot of people talk about, oh, we just want a ceasefire. No. Ceasefire is not good enough. Not good enough. The occupation and the apartheid must end. When people say, oh, we just want a ceasefire, that's weak sauce. That's weak. Get out of here with that. That's like a woman being in an abusive relationship with a man, and you go, just stop hitting her. Just stop hitting her. But stay with the guy? Stay with him? Are you kidding me right now? What? Absolutely not. Leave his ass. Take the kids. And take the house. 2, kick his ass out. Put out a restraining order. Do not cut him off. No. Do not stand for that BS. That's what it is. This is what South Africa is saying. We're not doing that just ceasefire. No. It's in the occupation, in the apartheid, because that's what's wrong. Because even if you did a ceasefire, then guess what? The ceasefire happens, they're still going to keep the Palestinians out. That's their land. They've been on there for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. You're not going to kick them out. What if they just said, oh, ceasefire in South Africa? Then what? South Africa wouldn't even be a black nation no more. It wouldn't even be an African nation anymore. Julius Malema knows this intimately. Let's continue.
Here's a reminder to please like and share the video.
Thank you very much. Y'all are doing great. Let's continue.
My guy, why should we care about whether there will be retaliation from the West? We are engaged in a struggle against imperialism and colonialism. And we make no apology that we are not friends with the West. It doesn't mean we can't trade with them. We'll trade with them through our own terms. They will not come and impose themselves on us like they are doing with the ANC. We are not part of CODESA. We've never had a facilitation between the Boers and the owners of the means of production here in South Africa and the ANC that was facilitated by Britain and all of that. This democracy came because the Oppenheimers left the country to go and meet the ANC in exile and said to the ANC, we are going to tell the National Party to end apartheid, and you are going to come back and govern, and you govern business as usual. Nothing changes. The ANC said yes. We don't have such an agreement with the West, with America, with the Oppenheimers. We don't know the Oppenheimers. Now when I saw the Oppenheimers for the first time, was there at Prince Mangosuthu Buthelez's funeral. I was like, this guy is a big guy. Even the Oppenheimers get out of their house to come and bury him. And the way they were so in charge, they were not sitting down in a funeral. They were going up and down. We gotta get the weight. So, get my Floyd Ageru Batsiba, Abavijaga Mainar, Woke Mamang, okay. The Oppenheimers themselves, the owners of South Africa. So we have no time for those people. We are going to reclaim our country. We are going to work with the Oppenheimers. We are going to work with Rupert through our own terms. He won't tell us what to do. He's a respected businessman. The Oppenheimers are respected business people. But it can be business as usual. That's all we're saying. It can be business as usual. Something has to give. We're not going to be controlled by Rupert here, who speaks to them like little kids. You must go and ask how Rupert speaks to our ministers. You can't try that with me. A white man. I don't care if you've got money or you don't have. I used to have a white mentor in Polokwane called Jimmy. Or something. One day he spoke to me in a bad way in a meeting. I said, you must never try that. He thought I was joking. I stood up. I said, no. No white man speaks to me like that. You don't do that. Don't do it. I don't care whether it was my man. No white man speaks to me the way Rupert speaks to your ministers. Ask Mbalula. Mbalula utawubuja. He will tell you. Wala need Mbalula. Rupert ila mo address. I le golf ngaro way yak highway. Where you going? Our address, Rupert. If you don't return Pravin, I'm taking my things, I'm leaving. You must try that with the EFF. If you don't do this, I'm taking my things, I'm leaving.
One of the things I am also an advocate for is if you have resources in your country and if the West doesn't want to play fairly with you, then it's like, all right, get out. Y'all want my cobalt and coltan? All right, fine. You guys going to trade and deal with me fairly? You're going to treat my people fairly? You're going to pay them a living wage? You're going to give them benefits? You're going to give them all these things that they should have. If that's what you want to do, if you want these resources, you're going to have to pay us for it. If you want my lithium, you're going to have to pay us for it. If you want my rubber, my platinum, my gold, you're going to have to pay us fairly for it. And then you're not going to come into my country and then take it over and destabilize it just so you can have some cheap ass land and put some sorry ass puppet in place so that you can extract the resources just for the sake of the corporations in your country. No. It's 2024, baby. We different now. People like Ibrahim Traore, he's built different, right? He's of the Thomas Sankara breed, right? Like, nah, France, get out. Boy, I'm telling you.
Hey, don't have time for that.
Don't have time.
China, Russia, we're going to work with them on our own terms.
On our own terms.
The Chinese don't go around Africa stealing anything from Africans. Your corrupt leaders overcompensate in exchange for something personal. That's what happens. The Chinese don't steal anything. One, they are in business. When the more you give them, the better for them. Why must they say no? Your leaders are not negotiating in good faith. They are negotiating with their families in mind. That's why they overcompensate. So we have no such a relationship with China. We've got a socialist and developmental relationship with China, and we know that China will help us. Russia is not our friend ideologically. We are with Russia in its fight against Ukraine because we know it's a NATO fight. It's not a Ukraine fight.
And you hear that? Because ideologically, we don't have much in common. They don't have much in common with Russia. I don't have much in common with Russia. And if anybody comes in and goes, oh my God, you're a Putin puppet. For who? What? Putin is anti-communist. Absolutely not. I have no love for that man. Putin is, how can I put it? He's not that much different than the leaders of the West. The only difference is he just doesn't want to be a puppet of the West. That's it. Right? Ideologically, he's a lot aligned with them, actually. He just resists the West. That's all it is.
so that NATO can expand its territory and be closer to Russia and undermine Russia. For that, we'll be with Russia because we can't allow territorial expansion of imperialism and colonialism in whatever direction. But Putin is not left. The government of Russia is not left ideological. If anything, Putin will be more aligned with the US in terms of policy and ideology, except their fundamental differences on imperialism, where Russia feels that America wants to control it through expanding the military base of NATO, because the military base of NATO is an American military base. So we are with Russia in that context, not that ideologically we're aligned, but with Vietnam, with Cuba, with China, it's a clear ideological alignment of the left forces, and that's where we belong, and we don't isolate anyone.
Do you want to watch?
So that's what Julius Malema was saying. And he's basically saying Israel should not have an open embassy among us. This was actually shared in Al Jazeera back in November. It says South African lawmakers vote to suspend Israel ties, close embassy. It says the motion calling for the closure of embassy passed with 248 votes in favor and 91 votes against. So it says the action is largely symbolic because it will be up to President Cyril Ramaphosa's government whether to implement it. So that is what is transpiring. Julius Malema saying, don't just close the Israeli embassy, but close the U.S. embassy too. Close them both. What do you guys think about that, man? Like, because I honestly agree with him. Like, nah, if the United States is sponsoring the terroristic acts of the Zionist state against the Palestinian people, then yeah, close the embassy. Go ahead. Because what the U.S. is doing is wrong. Wrong is wrong. And it should not be taking place at all. And as many protests and boycotts that are going on right now against the state of Israel, it is not the United States as the population that stands with the Zionist entity, also known as Israel. It is the leaders that are circumventing the will of the people that stand with Israel. It's like a friend of mine said. She said, the governments may be with Israel, but the streets are with Palestine. It's time for the streets to be represented within our governments, not the other way around. Julius Malema, people, I'm telling you, he makes no qualms. Gamer says South Africa and Africa is based. Absolutely. Whoever says they need to do some hardcore truth and reconciliation after they give the Palestinians back their country. Yeah. Absolutely. Good to see you in the chat, KC. Let me see here. Rondo says the Crusader Zionist colonial project should no longer exist. I said what I said. Call that land Palestine, equal protection under the law. I know this is unrelated, Zoe, but yeah. I hear you. I'm a little envious too. I mean, I drink a lot of water, but I feel like I can do better. You know what I'm saying? I can do better. Hopefully, by the time I get to his age, my skin will be just as clear. You know what I mean? Mizu says India ain't gonna do a step to China, JB. They ain't gonna be the rest of Europe simping for Germany. Oh man. Mastermind says I'm taking my ball and going home. I'm gonna be honest with you. A lot of these countries need to do that, but the thing is that the problem is when you have these governments that are ran by puppet leaders, right? When they're ran by puppet leaders, then they will basically give away the store. Okay, so here's the problem. Boom. When people talk about, oh my God, it's the African leaders that are corrupt, who put those leaders in place? Who put them there? It's not the people that actually put them there. Look, KD Lewis was in the chat. He wrote an article about what happened in Congo, about how they basically overthrew the democratically elected leader. With that being said, then the United States literally will put in a puppet dictator in order to ensure that they always have access, either cheap or free, to the resources. This is okay. I'm gonna give you guys an analogy. Let's say I want to rob a store. What's the easiest way for me to do it? Is it easy for me just to come in, sticking them up, right, as it were, and then pointing, the piece at them and saying, give me all your stuff you got in the back, right? I'm opening myself to other people trying to save the day. I'm opening myself to, the po-po wanting to come in and smoke me because I dare come in and try to steal the goods from the back. But what if I get somebody on the inside? What if I plan and then instead I get somebody to work behind that counter? And so when I come in, I don't have to come in aggressively. I just come in and say, hello, sir, how are you? I would like to buy some of your goods. And then the person behind the counter who is in cahoots with me goes, well, what do you know? We have a sale going on. 98% off just for you, right? Right. Okay. Then I hand them the money. Even though it's 98% off, they go to the back. They give me a little extra just because they're cool. And then they give me the goods. And then they walk out. And then I walk out with all the goods, even though I only spent 2% of the price instead of actual full price that the country was supposed to, store, silly me, was supposed to sell it for. And so basically, people will say, oh, well, we're not stealing the resources. Yes, you are. You're scamming the country out of their resources. Whether it's a scam or whether it's theft, it's still a crime that you're doing against those countries. And so that's what the United States does to all these African countries. They will put somebody in charge so that they can steal from the store. That's how it works. And how do they keep these areas destabilized? They have gangs that they will initially allow to run the area into the ground. Also, they use sexual assault to also keep the area destabilized, because if there's sexual assault happening, that means there's, especially to a lot of women, the women aren't going to be there. And guess what? If the women aren't there, the men will follow the women away. And so, or the people who are still there, they're going to work for starvation wages, and they're going to be wage slaves in order to get the resources for these big corporations. That's how it works. And the United States know this. Hell, the State Department even talked about it. They know, they do it. They admitted to it. And so when people talk about, oh, well, it's the African leaders that are the problem, well, who put them there? Because it wasn't through the actual people. Or they will rig the elections. Yes, by the way, the West, particularly in the United States, they actually got to be careful. They do funny stuff with their electoral process in other countries. Yeah, that's how it goes. This is why they did not like Patrice Lumumba, because he was democratically elected and he ran the country according to the will of the people. And the West did not like that because they wanted those resources for themselves. Sorry, I had to go on that rant, but whoever says we can't just send the CIA to knock off their government now because of BRICS. I'm thankful for BRICS. Yep. Interesting. Rondo says Russia, China, and Africa are ancient societies that have relations way before the crown powers of Europe were a thing. Yes. Dwayne says, and NATO is a fascist, imperialist, neo-colonial gang of thugs. I agree. Thank you. Good to see Extra Booyah in the chat. KD says, you just reminded me of that tweet from some dude that sent a picture of the president of Congo and acted like that was proof of white supremacy wasn't a problem for Africa as a continent. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Actually, I need to find that. That tweet, because I basically just destroyed the guy. Let me share that. Let me see. Because that dude had me messed up, man. I'm trying not to cuss, guys. I'm trying to be more family friendly. So that's why you guys hear me, not using foul language as much anymore. Why? Because, well, I want to be appealing for everybody. So, but let me see if I can find it. I know I put it in here somewhere. Let's see. I'm going to find it. I'm going to get it up here. Tonight, I celebrate my love for you. Hang on. By the way, I would love to see Norm Finkelstein rhetorically destroy Michael Rappaport. That would be, that would be glorious. Okay. All right, let me share this because this was epic. Katie, you're probably going to remember this. This was nice. I love this. So here's what I said. I said, boy, come here, boy. All right. Oh, somebody. Well, they blocked me. Anyway, oh no, I don't know what happened to this post. What happened to this post? Oh, what happened? I don't know what happened. It says this post is unavailable. Okay. says women and children are suffering in Congo. They're being tortured and raped and killed and separated from their parents. This is genocide still going on in Congo, but the main reason is natural resources. Hashtag Congo is bleeding. I shared that, right? I said, this is colonialism. Instead of trading fairly with nations for their resources, Western governments will install puppet leaders to run, manage those nations, and keep them destabilized so that the corporations can extract the resources for cheap or free. This is the case with the DRC. The capitalist system is the problem. The best way to help the people in the DRC and in Palestine is to dismantle the system here. Cut off the power source of genocide. The genocide stops. It may take a little bit, but it will eventually stop. That's what I said, right? So let me go to this person. So this person said, okay, I had muted him for a second because I'm tired of the BS. This person said, so the president of Congo is actually white, and he shows pictures of Congo. Now, let me say this right here. This is some of the most laziest ass thinking I have ever seen. This is lazy as hell. Why? Because just because a person who's running the country is of the same color and hue as everybody else doesn't mean that white supremacy isn't being used. Guess what? Do you think that white supremacy suddenly went away because we have President Obama in the White House? No, it's still a thing. Anywho, so after this lazily attempt to debunk me, I said, bruh, read, the truth shall set you free. This is from the State Department. Quote, over the next 4 years, as the Republic of Congo installed a series of prime ministers, the United States repeatedly attempted to create a stable pro-Western regime through vote buying and financial support for pro-Western candidates. And I included the link to the State Department talking about the Congo. You guys want to see? We'll see. Let's show. Let me show you something. Let me show you something. Office of the Historian. Right? Congo, decolonization and Cold War from 1960 to 1965. The decolonization of the sub-Saharan Africa from the late 1950s to the mid-1970s resulted in several proxy Cold War confrontations between the United States and the Soviet Union over the dozens of newly independent, non-aligned nations. The first such confrontation occurred in the former Belgian Congo, which gained its independence on June 30th, 1960. That's Patrice Lumumba. So, with this being said, what happened? The United States installed a puppet government, which is why the Congo, the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, is destabilized like it is right now. So when people say, oh, well, they're being run by bad governments, who helped install those bad governments? This is why people need to read history. And not revisionist history by the State Department, sometimes will do from time to time, but actual, true world history. Thank you, KD. Appreciate it, bro. Now, let me go to the Rockman chat just to see anything else in the Rockman chat. I think we're good there. All righty. Yep. Good to see you, Joey. Thank you. All right. So I am way over time, but it was a wonderful conversation. I want to thank Joey Peltier for coming on. Thank you so very much. You're going to be back. I hope you come back. We're going to have more conversations in the future. I love voices from my indigenous siblings because it gives me a perspective that I just don't know, and it helps me grow in that way. And this is why I love talking to them. Nice to have you. Come back again soon. Also, just to remind you guys, you know, a lot of what we Black people have went through in this country, we continuously, all the time, get used and exploited over and over let's not forget the legacy of Henrietta Lacks. Her legacy continues to live on, even just in the medical technology that we have today. So please remember her whenever you guys go to the hospital or go to the clinic or see your doctor, because guess what? Most likely she helped saving your ass. Yes. Right. And also, yes, because of people like Henrietta Lacks, a lot of us are still alive. And yes, that's also makes the case more for reparations for those of us who are descendants of enslaved people in the United States. It's true. Girl, you know it's true. And also, I actually have an agreement with Julius Malema about closing the U.S. Embassy in South Africa. In fact, I think we should close the Israeli embassy here in the United States. Even though I know that's not going to happen, I think it should be done. And I want to put that on record, because if they're committing a genocide, then they should not have access diplomatically to us until they get themselves right. Y'all either need to come correct or don't come at all. That's what I feel. So, with that being said, I just want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to thank all the patrons on Patreon and Coffee, as well as anybody that sends me any type of mutual aid through PayPal. Without you guys, I would not be able to do this channel. Thank you so very much for that. Also, if you guys have not already, we're also raising funds through Orlando Mutual Aid. I got to change this graphic, but we're trying to raise funds for our next action, and I'll be giving out the details for that in the next few days. But we're trying to raise funds for that as well. If you guys can go to $Orlando RBN, and we will get that squared away. Also, just to let you guys know, I will be getting into the further readings later this week of Laziness Does Not Exist by Dr. Braun Price. We're going to be getting into that, so I cannot wait to get into that later this week. Also, we're going to be doing further reading of The Will to Change Men, Masculinity, and Love by Bell Hooks. We're going to continue the reading of that as well. Yes, I do these readings on my channel. And the reading for the Of Water and the Spirit, Ritual, Magic, and the Initiation in the Life of an African Shaman by Melodoma Patrice Some, Dr. Melodoma Patrice Some. We're going to be continuing the reading of that as well. That should be coming out tomorrow. So I'm going to be sharing those readings as well. If you guys actually want to listen to the readings and discussions, all you guys need to do is go into the playlist tab on my channel, and you guys can see that, as well as other books that I've read. The only book that you guys will not see, you guys will see a special for it, but you guys won't see the regular reading for it, is Blood in My Eye by George Jackson. That's exclusively on Rockfin because it's too spicy for YouTube. So if you guys want to hear the reading for Blood in My Eye by George Jackson, to all of you who are new subscribers to the channel, you guys can go to my Rockfin channel to listen to the readings for that. But everything else, just go to my playlist. So with that being said, I am going to be heading out. I also have a video that I want to close out with. Oh, Roger said that he wanted me to play this as well as a closeout video. I don't know, man. The stream is a little bit long, but I don't know. I'll play a little bit of it, but then I'll do my closeout video as well. Let me do this. Let's go here and let's get this video started. But this is kind of interesting, especially in regards to hemp. Let me go here. Let me see where and then I'll end it. Let me see. 45 seconds. Okie dokie. Yeah, these guys are. And we'll start at 43. All right. So let me share the screen, and then we'll go into this just a little bit. And then I'm not going to be able to play the entire thing, but let's get into that.
and click the bell icon so you don't miss any of our amazing videos. According to Henry Ford, why use up the forests, which were centuries in the making, and the mines, which required ages to lay down, if we can get the equivalent of forest and mineral products in the annual growth of the hemp fields? Henry Ford created a car in 1941 that was made of plastic from hemp and other plant materials and operated on hemp gasoline. But why don't we use it today? According to an article published in the New York Times on February 2, 1941, Ford's bioplastic Model T from 1941 was made of hemp, flax, wheat, and spruce pulp, making it 10 times more durable than steel and lighter than fiberglass. The ethanol used in the automobile was produced from hemp or other agricultural waste. Ford's experimental model was considered a step towards the achievement of his desire to grow automobiles from soil, according to Popular Mechanics in their December 1941 issue, and it also helped to minimize greenhouse emissions, which were already known to exist at the time. Guy Callender showed for the first time in 1938 that rising atmospheric CO2, the primary greenhouse gas, was to blame for the rise in Earth's temperature. Svante Arrhenius, a Swedish physicist, proposed a correlation between atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations and atmospheric temperature as early as 1896, indicating that the burning of fossil fuels may eventually lead to accelerated global warming. Prior to this, global ecologist Alexander Humboldt foresaw human-caused climate change in 1807. When acid rain and the greenhouse effect were being studied in the 1950s, an article stated that America has consumed 80% of her known oil and gas reserves. By using fuels made from biomass, the warming effect will be reversed and acid rain will be reduced. Ford stated in 1925 to the New York Times that almost anything may be used as fuel in the future, including fruit like the sumac, growing by the road, or apples, weeds, and sawdust. Every piece of vegetable matter that can be fermented has fuel. One crop of potatoes on an acre can provide enough alcohol to power the equipment required to work the fields for a century. According to their findings, hemp is excellent for pyrolytic conversion into chemical feedstocks, transportation fuels, electricity, and heat for industrial uses. The same basic thermochemical decomposition process is used to refine both biomass and fossil fuels, Ford stated. According to experts, the need for batteries for electric vehicles would rise by 30% between now and 2030. In light of this, the market for EV batteries should make roughly $410 between 2020 and 2030. EV batteries are not yet perfect. They take a while to charge, have a limited driving range, and have prompted questions about their potential negative effects on the environment. However, a new category of EV batteries, known as plant-based batteries, might be able to address some of these problems and potentially accelerate the expansion of the sector. What is their secret source? Hemp. Byproducts from the hemp plant, which is also the plant from which CBD is derived, are present in plant-based EV batteries. Even though research on these batteries is still in its early stages, it is possible that they will exceed lithium-ion and graphene batteries, which are now the two most common types of batteries used in electric vehicles in terms of performance, cost, and environmental impact.
So I put the link in that video to the chat so you guys can watch the full video. It's about it's a little less than 20 minutes, so you guys can get into that. But thank you so very much to Roger for that as well. I wanted to make sure that I get some of that in there as well. But yes, so like I always say, everybody, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny, because joy is revolutionary. And if you guys can get hemp products, then start off strong. Go ahead, get some hemp, right? It's hemp to be square. Anyway, so thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in. I'm gonna head out, but we're gonna close out with a beautiful video. And yes, joy is revolutionary, and please continue to advocate for our planet, because ultimately it's all we have. And also solidarity and love to all of our indigenous siblings around the world, as well as the water protectors who are trying to keep our water safe. Without you guys, we'd be in huge trouble. So thank you so very much for that. And I didn't tell you to start. Anywho, take care, everybody. Mwah! Forehead kisses, and I will see you in the next one. All right. Deuces, Bruces.
Resistance. Respectfully, I completely disagree with this. Actually, joy is a very powerful tool of resistance, and it's also needed in any liberation movement. Self-care was actually popularized by Audre Lorde in the 1980s as a way for Black and Brown communities to reclaim rest as a practice and as an act of resistance. And within that rest, right, because rest is not simply just laying down, rest also meant to allow yourself to experience pleasure, allow yourself to experience joy during that time, allow yourself to be with community. All of those are restful acts. When you allow yourself to experience joy, especially when Black and Brown bodies have historically not been able to simply just be with joy, that is in itself radical, because society doesn't want us to have that experience. So why would we want to be a part of a movement that also demonizes joy? We're literally going through the same oppressive ideologies that has been placed onto us, and we're putting it into liberation spaces as well.
Can y'all stop telling people that joy is a form of resistance?
Respectfully, I completely disagree with it.
Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much, and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.